And I'd like to call this Concord School Committee meeting to order.
And I'd like to call the Regional School Committee to order. Note that we're being recorded, and can have a motion to enter executive session.
Yes, I would move for both committees that the Concord and Concord Carlisle school committees enter into executive session under Purpose 3 of the Open Meeting Law to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and to return to open session at approximately 6:30 p.m.
Second for both?
Second for both.
You start talking.
The vote is a roll call.
Leroy?
Booth, aye for both.
Bout, aye for both.
Stores on.
Ron, aye for both.
Boynton, aye for both.
Johnston, aye for both.
Right, I'll call the Concord School Committee back to order.
I'm calling the Regional School Committee back to order. Note that we're being recorded. And public comments is first on the agenda. Carl,
Come on over here. We're still your chair. Haven't gotten back to you yet. She shows up. The other girl.
They're going to need to come get whoever's here is here.
Okay. Just share. Hey.
Thank you very much. Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End. I'm offering a brief comment on one of the items in your agenda. It is the PEG Studio User Agreement. It's Section 10 under Old Business, number 10A. Within that document, this is the second draft, I'd like to highlight Section 8, which is the right to relocate the studio space at the discretion of the district for reasons of repairs, renovations, or future uses of CCHS. I've been tracking this document. I saw the earlier version as well. And I'm speaking today as the chair of the PEG Access Advisory Committee, so in that official capacity of sorts. I'd like to note that the language presented here in Section 8 theoretically could allow the district to put the studio in a broom closet. The town is the steward of the PEG access funds, and as such has a responsibility for making sure the funds are properly spent and that public has proper access to the studio. This kind of a major decision is the type that that I would recommend be shared with the town of Concord. There are some technical reasons for why the studio is located where it is, and the language that's presented in Section 8 does not necessarily respect the requirements for the studio itself. So I would recommend that the committee consider, in looking at this draft today, either revising the wording of Section 8, the Clause 8 of this document, to recognize Concord's right to participate in any decisions to relocate the use of the studio, or else strike the provision in its entirety. I'll be here in case comments come up later on, and that's my comment. Thank you very much.
right. So I'd like to welcome two of our high school students who are going to be observing our meetings and making some comments. We tonight have Ellen Sue here and Grace Jennings.
Hello. Hi, I'm Ellen. So I think we're here to talk a little bit about the new PR group that Grace and I are part of. So we, along with two other students, are working with Mr. and Ms. Rulo, Ms. Knight, and Mr. Miller. And we're sort of publicizing different things going on in school. So not only sports, but different projects going on in classes and clubs and things like that. We're kind of going to be publicizing them instead of the administration, because they can't always get there. So I think our role is to sort of spread word, and so we'll sort of touch on a couple things that we're working on in the fall.
Right, and as Ellen was saying, I think a lot of the idea of what we're trying to do is sort of reach more students as opposed to, and parents, and just to kind of get more excitement around individual student success, but also success as a community. And so some of the things that we're focusing on in like this week and the upcoming weeks. Well, this week we have Kicks for Cancer coming up, so that's a really big event. And this year it's totally grown in so many ways. But so on Saturday there's both boys and girls JV and varsity soccer games, and now there's Sticks for Cancer, which is a field hockey game that they have. And then tomorrow cross country also has their race, which is a fundraiser as well. And there's the pig dance on Saturday. Friday, sorry. And then there's and then another thing that's sort of school related is the Mighty Moose Road Race, which is going on Sunday. And we have a lot of student volunteers that are partaking in that. So that's kind of a lot of what we're trying to highlight in the student community this week.
In addition, last week we sort of did a little bit of publicity on the activities fair, which is when all the clubs in Concord Carlisle High School sort of set up a little station in the cafeteria or learning commons, and all the new students or returning students sort of walk through and get to know the different clubs and sign up for, put their email down a couple places. And we were both there for the whole time, and it was a lot of fun, a lot of new clubs at the high school, so that was great.
Yeah, and then I think there's just there's the plays coming up, which we actually aren't that involved in. One of the other girls that's in our little PR group is a little bit more involved with that. So we can't really talk too much about that, but they have a finalized cast coming out soon, so we're excited to release that to the community, and dance crew and other things.
Yeah, and so for example, something we would do is the other girl we work with, Gabby, she and Ted interviewed the new theater teacher because I think she's new at our school this year, so they did some publicity on that so the students could get to know her and get to know what the theater group was up to.
Yeah.
So how do you guys push that out to the student body? What kind of?
We're trying to use whatever forms of social media we can. So Facebook is kind of used to both reach parents and students right now, which is kind of nice because that's kind of a way for everybody in the community. And then also we're using Instagram and trying to figure out how to use Snapchat as well. So
sort of find where the students are already on sort of in the week and the weekends, and so it's easier for them to access, because I think one problem with the principal's blog was that not all students check their email that frequently and were willing to read the whole thing, so we're trying to push out more frequent and quick posts, so it can be a story or something that people can just watch for 30 seconds in their day and catch up on what's going on in the community.
So do you guys video record yourselves and put that on Facebook, or are these email, written? What's your?
Well, so far it's kind of been tailored to what we're sort of going after. So for the interview with the teacher, they're making a little video, and Grace and I we've only done the activities fair so far, and so we just went and we videoed all the tables and sort of put that out there for people to see. But I think in the future we'll also do some write-ups and other posts.
That's great.
So,
And how? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, there are several of us sitting around this table that don't have students at the high school and would love to know, and I think the wider community would love to know some of the stuff going on. But Kids for Cancer is a huge community event, so don't forget the old folks.
Speak for yourself.
Just send us an email.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah.
Email, that old-fashioned form of communication. How do you encourage everybody to follow you? For Instagram, you need people following you in order to see it, right?
Well, I think
See, I'm hip.
I'm on it.
Yeah. So how are you encouraging that? How are you getting people to kind of sign up and follow you?
Well, I think something that's really popular at the high school is a CCHS student fan page, which is where captains from every team post about games that are coming up or sporting events that are coming up, and so that's kind of one way that just that is kind of a platform that's on Facebook, yeah. So we're kind of trying to see how people, that's a huge snowball effect, every single person in the school is added within 24 hours, basically. And so I think that's kind of the goal we're trying to do with other platforms. So hopefully if people can get a little bit more momentum on the Instagram, which already has a big following, we can get more. And I think also things like the Snow Day Watch fan page, things that people really know.
It's a popular
It's
one.
a good one.
There are a lot of people on that one.
Yeah, a lot of people are. So.
Wow.
That's terrific.
This is great.
Awesome.
A lot of us are sitting here mentally taking notes because we've been talking a lot in our committee about, in fact, we're talking about it later, how we get the word out more about what we're doing and communicate with everybody. So this is great to hear. It's terrific. Thanks.
Nice.
Yeah, we might be knocking on your door, asking for help.
Our strategies up till now have been to post on Instagram that they should check their email, and I think this might be more effective.
It just doesn't work.
So with all that's going on at the high school and the likelihood that people are going to start to seek you out because they know what you're doing and they're going to ask for your help, are you going to monitor your own time so this doesn't get too big for you?
Yeah, I think we're sort of structuring this almost like a little class. We're gonna meet like a certain number, not very frequently, but at least once a week, and sort of have like a work period. So because I think the administration also really wants us to be like focused on it when they want us to like care about it, which we do. But as we get busier, it would be tough to sort of add on as like homework or something. So it's really helpful that we all have a common like lunch block. So once a week so far we've been getting together and like working during that block, or at least like assigning tasks for the following.
Also, I mean, right now it's just 4 of us, but I think the goal is that this is just kind of a pilot. So the goal is that eventually we'll be able to get more people who are involved in different facets of like the community and like the theater program and arts and stuff like that, so that we can kind of cover a wider variety of news and events.
Well, we're not only impressed with your communication efforts, but also your leadership efforts.
That is great. Great to hear that.
Exciting.
Next up is recognitions.
Yeah, so we're in the early phases of the year, and we thought it was a good time to look back, especially as Q5 played out at the very last hours of the year. So in the theme that the girls have started here, one of the kids actually took on a project to make a video of the Q5 events and takeaways, so it seemed worthwhile to give that video a little bit of airtime. I've asked the girls to be open to your comments and questions about Q5 and share their own experiences. And again, this is a student-made video, but we're awfully impressed and think it really captured the spirit of the
That's impressive, because when I did watch it, it was like, I thought you must have hired somebody to.
No,
me too.
Self-initiated, one of the kids very early, day one or just before, said, can I video this and make that my project?
No.
And we went with it, and this is what we got.
It's amazing. I
Yeah,
watched it also all the time. Let's watch it again. It's amazing.
And I am amazed at what we achieved together. The final 8 days of the school year were truly incredible. Q5 is a project we started 18 months ago, and I am amazed at what we achieved together. There are so many people to thank, but most importantly, I must thank members of the PA and CEF. Without their generosity, none of this is possible, so thank you.
Q5 is an immersive learning experience, leveraging the curiosity, knowledge, and passions of students and faculty to foster complex thinking, creativity, and collaboration. Q5 complements our academic program and seeks to inspire students and faculty to pursue shared ideas and interests.
I actually met lots of new people, and I never really thought I was going to do that in Shark Tank, but everybody really wants to connect with you and actually have a great time and make it worth your while for the short 4 days you have. And in those 4 days, I learned so much from other people, and they also probably learned something from me too. Sharing knowledge is honestly one of the greatest gifts you can do, and through Q5 we can definitely do that.
Everyone has always had an idea that they think would make a great company, but this has really been a great way to show how anyone can take their idea and with a good group work towards building something out of it.
It was very interesting to see how our ideas could kind of blossom and building actually the team. I think that was the most impactful part of this experience, because the team is really what makes the idea, and it's really what made this experience almost perfect. It really did make it perfect.
I absolutely loved Q5. I did urban walking, which we just walked around Boston, and it was so much fun and so nice to like get outside and see parts of Boston that I'd never seen before, and I was with a bunch of my friends. Yeah, it was really fun. And we got some good food. Some really good food.
I thought Q5 went really well. What was probably the most enjoyable part of it was the buy-in of my faculty and students. What I really enjoyed was there was a 3-component part to it. So we did 45 minutes of content and theory to kind of analyze, deconstruct the Jungian shadow according to depth psychology. Then they were able to actually kind of think about the shadow elements, which tend to be any parts of themselves they deem inappropriate or just socially unacceptable. And I wanted them to realize we can actually channel that into something that is appropriate, and we can use aggression as a kind of a psychological outlet for stress. So it was really cool was seeing them buy into the theory and then actually go down and really kind of box with intensity. They picked up on it so quickly. The aggression was great. I would say the stress release was also pretty cool. After that, we did a yoga session, which we tried to then put mind, body back together and really attempt to kind of merge all the different fragmented parts of our personality back into kind of a collective whole. And what I loved about it is they used their mind first 60 minutes and body second 60 minutes, and then mind and body to merge it all back together. They seemed refreshed. They really seemed to enjoy it, so I couldn't be any more satisfied with how it went. They were great, and the administration's been great. It's been really cool. I loved it.
I did CC community concerts, and basically we just got put into groups and we assembled a bunch of music together, and then that was the first 2 days. The second 2 days we went out and we just went to like a church, a few libraries. I learned a lot about working together with other people, and just like learned a lot of experience with like performance and music, and I learned to like put stuff together quickly, and I think it definitely helped me a lot, and this gave me a lot of experience in music and performance and practice and stuff like that.
Hi everybody. Beekeeping in Q5 this week went great, I thought. Our hive visit out to Marshall Farm was absolutely mind-blowing with all the honey that was in that hive, how calm all the students were, how confident they were in working with bees. Only one person got stung, and it was their fault. So, sorry, that was an outtake. You can put that under bloopers. That was for you, by the way, Elena. I did that for you. Come on in. Oh, okay, good. See, that's why I suggested it. All right, sorry, I couldn't help myself.
We've both done the beekeeping class at different times. I learned a lot about really not just bees, but kind of the environment and like how bees interact with the environment. So that's really interesting.
And a lot of like getting started if we ever did want to actually keep bees by ourselves. We have a lot of materials and resources.
I just wanted to try something new, and it's really been amazing. I realized that I really do enjoy art and stuff, and I want to keep doing it and continuing it after this, but I definitely wouldn't feel the same way if I didn't take this course, so it's been amazing.
Q5, I had a great time.
Thank you
For Q5. Thank you so much
for making Q5 possible.
for making Q5 possible.
For making Q5 possible.
For making Q5 possible.
For making Q5 possible. For making Q5 possible.
Thank you, Concord Ed Fund, for making Q5 possible.
Thank you, Parents Association.
Thank you to the Concord Ed Fund for making Q5 possible. It was a great experience.
Thank you, Concord Ed Fund.
Thank you, Parents Association.
I just want to say thank you for helping us run Q5. It's been an awesome experience for all the students and teachers, and we love it.
Just amazing. It is.
That's the third or fourth time I've seen it, and you just get totally enwrapped.
Oh my God.
Girls, yeah, let's hear from the girls. Do you want to share any of your experiences?
Yeah, so for the first week, so I did 3 courses. And so for the first week, I was split. My day was split between getting to know thyself and others through personality tests and the struggle for human justice. And so those were the two teachers actually I had never had before. So that was an awesome way for me to like get to know different teachers, which I really liked that experience. And also I was with kids from all different grades, which was kind of cool because obviously I wouldn't have had a chance to be in classes with them. And it was kind of fun to like use the classroom platform to learn about something that you definitely never learn in a classroom in regular school. And then second week I did rock climbing, which was really cool. Yeah, that was really fun. And that was again like more, it was a little bit more outdoorsy, or I mean it was indoors, but it was more active and more fun. Well, I guess I shouldn't say more fun, but it was awesome.
Fun is important in school.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, so my first week was actually rock climbing, so we both did it, but different weeks. And I knew the teacher, but I was kind of nervous going into it because I didn't know any like students in my course. But I like loved it so much. I feel like it introduced a new hobby, and as Grace said, it really allowed me to make friends that aren't in my grade because no one really knew each other, and so it was such a good like opportunity. Like everyone's doing an activity that you need to like work together for, so it really forced you to really like bond with each other, and it's people that like I never would have had a class with throughout like all of high school. So I really valued that. And then my second week, I had Following the Path of the Rose Paddle, and that was with some of the Rivers teachers, and that was very outdoorsy. We canoed every day, and it was so much fun. I really thought it was kind of like a taste of Rivers almost. We had like journals, and we just like picnicked on different like islands that we canoed to, and it was a lot of fun. And again, I met a lot of people that I never knew. I didn't really have any close friends doing it either. But I found out by the end, like it didn't really matter if you knew anyone in your course or not, because all of the like different courses are very like bonding things. They're not really like a normal, say, math class or something where you can do your own work. They're all like collaborative, and I thought that was the best part, just meeting new people that I wouldn't have met otherwise.
So cool.
So it just, the trickle down just sort of keeps happening. So the story I learned as school opened up is that beehive, the originally planned beehive that was owned by that teacher, collapsed just before Q5, and lo and behold, another teacher had just signed on for a beehive of hers, and she was able to share it. So, really amazing things like that. The other thing, Mike and Brian presented at the superintendent's conference this summer that we attended, and I am still getting comments. It happened actually this morning at the breakfast I was at. Still getting feedback from the superintendents and other districts that saw the presentation and the takeaways they had and inspiration they had to go try their own thing outside the box. So we've already met and started to debrief both the logistics and fiscal side. Mike and Kristen and I met with the CCTA yesterday and talked on tweaks we need to look at. They're minor. I absolutely say they're minor. The overall sense is incredibly positive. So planning's already started for next year. Sign-ups were going to be earlier this year because we know what we're doing. So kids should be able to get going this fall, and mid-year we'll know where everybody's going and what we're offering. So it's just great. Really exciting.
Amazing. What was the typical group size? You talked about how important it was to do the bonding that you discussed.
I think it varied per course. So for the rock climbing course, there's about 40 people, because it was just like one big bus that left school every day to go to the gym. And then for the canoeing course I was in, there were about 20 people, so it was a little smaller. So yeah, there's definitely a range.
Yeah, the classrooms are about the same too. They're about 20, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Any idea how lucky you are?
We're also envious.
I'm so enthusiastic about it.
Forget the rock climber, it was called going home.
That's great. That's great to hear.
That's great. Thanks for telling us about your experience. It's fun to hear it firsthand.
Thank you, girls. You're free to go tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Interested
That's
in
awesome.
staying.
Yeah,
We should
thank you
get
very
a little
much.
product placement money from Vinnie Vines.
I know.
You guys are going to teach
And
you 5 on VR.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we're bummed we can't do it this year because we're seniors.
Oh, no.
That's right. Sell it to the rest of
That's right. You won't be when the time comes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
You too.
Next on the agenda is reading of the minutes. We have 4 different minutes to approve. Any edits?
I'll move to approve all of them. The July 24th, August 7th, August 27th, and August 30th minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Erin.
Yep.
Yes, it's a lot.
Doing all that.
So chairs and liaison reports are next. Any liaison reports?
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you a little bit about the budget subcommittee, which has met a couple of times now. I think it's been a great experience for those of us there. Wally and Christine jump in at any time, but Jared has been really taking us through it at a much more detailed level what he's been doing in this zero-based budgeting process and how the process works and in what areas he's finding efficiencies, and how the transfer process will work and kind of how it's all going. So it's been really, really just educational, informative, great information. We've had several observers there at the first couple meetings, and it's just been a great experience so far. So that's the high level.
Good. Anyone else?
Well, we had a chair's breakfast.
Sure.
Chair's breakfasts are limited to an hour for those of you who've done it. And Bob and I were in the back of the room, so we were right at the end, and we were able to at least articulate, where we are and the articles and special town meeting and middle school hopes and dreams, and so at least we were able to articulate. It was a little bit at the end where they were finishing up, but and we had a PTG meeting, presidents, which again was a great opportunity to sort of discuss special town meeting and the articles and all those things for people who were not aware. That was a month ago, it was 4 weeks ago. No one was really aware of any of it. So it was very beneficial to have the schools and representatives of the schools there to help start the communication flow.
So I attended the select board meeting last night, which took 3 hours. A lot of the meeting was taken up by discussion with folks from Verizon who are desperately looking for a cell tower location, and none was really offered, so this is an ongoing problem because the select board has received a lot of emails of dropped calls around the center of Concord, and both the police chief and the fire chief were there saying that this, if it continues, it certainly gets worse. It's a safety issue. So there'll be more on that subject going forward. They also took time to recommend affirmative action or not on the articles of special town meeting, 13 articles. They did recommend affirmative action on our Article 6, and on 7 they basically postponed their decision till their 6:30 meeting on October 1st, the night of the special town meeting. They also voted on affirmative action for Article 9, the SRO, which is good. Again, there were some comments about the scope of special town meeting and what it means to have a quick, short special town meeting of 2-3 articles or 13 like we're experiencing now. So that's going to be something I think that'll be addressed by the stakeholders, I think, going forward, but no particular plans.
Are they like special town meeting should be special? Should be exceptions? Is that what the point is?
Yeah.
But once you schedule one,
exactly.
it all piles on.
And this is what happened this year. But is there a way that we can sort of manage that? And the select board, of course, is the first instance of any kind of suggestions, and whether obviously you have to look at mass state laws and so forth, because this I'm sure is covered in state laws. Yeah, right.
I forgot to mention too, I should have also mentioned I went to the League's Education Committee meeting, which I'm going to monthly, and was great. They went through kind of first an overview of a lot of what we've been talking about. I was able to answer a few questions, but really it shows Edie's taking quite good notes when she's here, because she did the rundown of most of it as well as I could have. I will share, it was nice to hear some praise about the fact that we are certainly running things in a very transparent and open way, and there's appreciation of that, so I wanted to share that with everybody. And I shared some more specific feedback with Lori and Jared, but it was a great meeting. They're also working a lot on civics education and things that can be done outside of the schools. Even they're working on a civics B and some other things. So that's great. And I know that Lori has since met with them, and it's great that I think creating a really good cooperative and collaborative relationship here, helping each other.
Yeah,
so that's nice.
I can report out that CCACE, Adult and Community Education, they're running a new and different program on November 7th. It's called the Defamation Project, and it's actually a play that the audience is the jury. And it's interesting because people are not sure if it's political or not, but it really is going to be a remarkable program. So
it sounds, I'm signed up for it. I can't wait.
Oh, good.
It sounds
good.
awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. So we're talking up because we need the bodies there to see how great it is. We don't want you to miss it.
The PEG committee, the PEG advisory committee met last week. You know, it's chaired by Carl and Reed. All indications are that the transition from CCTV Inc., the private independent nonprofit, and the soon-to-be Town of Concord managed PEG access should be pretty smooth come next Monday. And the CCTV employees are already moving over to the Town of Concord employment, so that won't happen abruptly one day. It'll already be in place for the two town meetings that are coming up.
And, you know, in the past, there was a question about the archives, and I imagine they're well taken care of, right?
We need to, I think, in my estimation, we need to see that the inventory is cleaned up. We know that everything exists, but is it easy to put one's hands on it? How are these things organized? I think that's going to require some additional attention.
Okay. Anyone else?
Can I quick? This actually is not a school committee observer report. In fact, it's outside of my role as school committee. But I just wanted to give a quick shout out to administration and staff at the high school also for the incredible support of the Mighty Moose race that's coming up on Sunday. It's something, it is officially a part of the Kicks for Cancer event. It's raising money specifically for a research team at Dana-Farber that works on ovarian cancer. As most of you know, it's in honor of Jenna Swain, who we lost this summer. And the support that we've gotten from the school is incredible, and we keep asking for more and more support because the registrations keep growing and growing, and we have just gotten such great support from the school, from the staff there, the custodial staff, Mike, teachers, everyone in between. It's fabulous.
Sounds like that's not just the school, but the entire
and the community is stepping
coming out.
forward. It's becoming,
Police
I mean, I
DPW
have to
and
sit here and
everyone
try to
else.
say this without getting teary, because I get teary every time I tell my kids the update of the number of registrations, but everybody who I've called in the community to ask for help or donations has jumped in so quickly. I mean, the police, the DPW, Crosby, Sparrow Farm, Dunkin' Donuts, they're all just throwing support our way. And when, I will say briefly, when Jenna first started planning this, Jenna, who we lost, started planning this while she was still receiving cancer treatment, she had hoped that after a couple of years of running this event, that maybe we'd get to 500 community members participating. Well, as of this morning, and I haven't looked, I should look right now. This morning we were up over 800, and still, I mean, and that was 30 overnight since last night when we were at 775. I mean, it's growing like crazy. It's just incredible. So it's a really, really exciting community in Fed, and so just thank you. The fact that it's school supported and sponsored makes a big difference too. It's going to be really fun.
So what time is the race? And where
So
does
that
it
is
start?
Sunday morning. This coming Sunday morning.
Yeah.
The kids 1 mile race starts at 8:30, which will be down on the field. So it's basically going to be 2 laps around the baseball and softball fields, and then the 5K starts and ends right in front of the cafeteria in that parking lot there. So it'll start there. It does a loop through town, Concord Center, and back down Walden Street and back into the high school. The finish line is again right where we started in front of the cafeteria. And then after the race, we're having a post-race just social event for anybody and everybody who can stay and and enjoy. We're providing some very light refreshments, which is going to be a little short given the number of people now coming. Dunkin' Donuts is giving us 1,250 munchkins. It's incredible. And our farm is sending food. We will also have some food for sale. There's going to be someone there making breakfast sandwiches and other stuff. So it'll go all morning. Registration starts at 7 a.m., but the races are at 8:30 and 9 o'clock, and we'll be there pretty much probably all morning through 11 or so.
And do you need to pre-register on a website?
It's recommended, but you don't have to. If you don't know until Saturday night if you can make it, show up Sunday and register day of. So, but the online registrations will actually stop Friday night, but there will also be, we'll have a table at Kicks for Cancer most of the day on Saturday. As of 2 o'clock, I think that table is going to be there, taking registrations there as well. So it's on fire. It's exciting. So thank you for the support of it. I appreciate it.
I don't think we're doing as much. I think it's just all coming together.
Well, and it really, I mean, I've been in touch with the custodial staff and people at the high school a lot, and they are just so incredibly helpful. It's wonderful. So thank you.
Sounds excellent.
Yeah, it's great. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you.
Superintendent's report is next.
Oh, great. Thank you. So this is an effort to capture where we are as we open the school year, both on some of the projects we were working on last year. And the really exciting news as I put this together, many of them have become part of the strategic plan and are really formally our priorities going into this school year. So we're hitting the ground running on many of them because of that. I did highlight for you, we have drafted priority initiatives of the set in the strategic plan. And right now, these are just at the administrative level. I'm hitting all of the October staff meetings for feedback from the faculties, just to be sure we're all staying on the same page. I shared this with them electronically, but I want that face-to-face opportunity. So I don't think there's anything here that's going to surprise you either. These have been part of previous district goals. We're going to roll these into the school improvement plans, which will come to you in October, and that will fine-tune them as each building looks at where they're, at that point they need to look at where they are at in the process of where these need to go and what their goals are. You'll see much of this in my goals that'll be drafted for you in October as well. So just quick highlights. So we just mentioned the priority topics, tiered levels of support, which you've heard as RTI for a couple of years now. I think the most exciting part is our link now to social emotional, not only to take the core academics, but to expand that to social emotional RTI, and we're really excited about some of the pilot work we'll be doing this year. We'll be looking at the special education reviews that we've already received and be reflecting on what those mean to us and making appropriate plans for changes. I just mentioned the social emotional, so there's a whole initiative here about that per se. And that leads into comes right out of our student wellness objective. We'll similarly be under the student wellness objective looking at, this was fascinating because where it landed, we ended up with mindfulness and use of technology in the same initiative, which at first sounded like, boy, we kind of forced that because the technology kept floating, where does it fit? And as we drafted the action plan last week, it completely fits. As we talked on, what we mean by that is that balance that the kids we are all struggling for with the distraction and the demands of the technology. But the mindfulness fits into that. So I'm really intrigued about how that's going to play out. Looking at homework, especially at the secondary levels, we're continuing that work. Challenge success is either getting an ongoing effort or a reboot, and those schools taking that on really in depth. You'll hear a lot from Justin on that. Cultural competency, the next 4 are all from that objective, and we're going to write one action plan for all 4 of them because they're so closely intertwined. There are nuances here that are definitely separate, but we felt really strongly that, especially this year where our main focus is professional development, we can incorporate all 4 and start to make some progress. So we have, again, and I'll loop to mindfulness as well, Concord Education Fund has very generously supported broad-based professional development and curriculum work in mindfulness and cultural proficiency. So we've got a lot of resources to work with and just fleshing those plans out. And then finally, 4.1 is our facilities one, which is all about the middle school. There are other facilities initiatives there that we've decided those can take some time to get to as the other initiatives we are in the early stages of considering, but the real priority is as you heard at the last Concord meeting, is the middle school building. So it's actually really fun. He gets excited about the numbers. This is fun for me to watch everything start to sync up and align, to see what the schools bring back for their improvement plans. You'll see in my goals, the evaluator goals across the district will start to sync up. And it just means we're all going in the same direction, at the same pace, and on course with each other. And there's no way you can't make progress that way. So more to come. The action plans need tweaking. You'll get to see those too, obviously, when they're a little bit tighter and firmer. The living document, I know we're going to talk about the strategic plan document later on. It's going to be a living document. So we were already back revisiting the outcomes that are in there. So the vote we're having tonight is pretty much about the initiatives and objectives. We're starting to call it a working document because if you do this right, I don't think it ever gets that final stamp really. So more to come on that later tonight. Cultural proficiency, just to highlight our amazing keynote speaker. Thanks to the Ed Fund, we were able to bring Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum in to kick off the year. Again, just like Q5, the trickle down, we're still getting positives from the staff as we talk on what really inspiration she set for us as we begin to really tackle this work in a committed way.
Well, can I just ask you a question about the, you use cultural proficiency sometimes and cultural competence?
Right, we're working on definitions of each so that we can, in my mind, those two are fairly synonymous.
Okay.
But this is part of the work we have is to get the semantics straightened up.
So are there plans to get the broader community involved and educated? And, I mean, some of this just sounds really interesting.
Yes, I think it will bring to that, to grow to that. I think we have to get some further in-house work done first, so we're all on the same page. And what I'm even realizing is a few of the initiatives in the first strand on innovative and integrate all that. With that, I want to start with the leadership team and make sure we're all on the same page. So I think there's probably some rippling out that will happen, but we're by year 3, 4, and 5, absolutely. Years 1 and 2, it might need to stay tighter, but you're completely right. The messaging and communication, especially around the cultural work, has already been important, and I could see that part already being engaging, but a lot more to come. Communication and collaboration. We're often running with trying to really work with all of those people who support and surround us. I've been to a number of back to school nights. I will admit I didn't get everywhere because special town meetings had me out a little more than normal in September, so I had conflicts. I did the high school in Sanborn so far. Peabody's this week. I don't know if I'll make that one either. We did meet with 3 members of the League of Women Voters, Jared and I both, and had a really positive collaboration with them. I'm due to present at the Concord Rotary Club on October 18th, as well as CPAC's coming up. This morning, I was at the district attorney's breakfast for superintendents, and I forgot the fire chiefs in my list here, police, fire, and superintendents, and just hear updates out of the DA's office, most notably the support they offer us. They have a lot of programming and resources that we can tap, so it was a valuable time with them this morning. Response to intervention, I mentioned we're tightening up all our screeners and getting synced up on data collection and our fall work to identify students who need supports. Probably most exciting are the pilots at the high school, especially where we're piloting screeners with the freshman class in the core academics that we have not done in the past. So you've heard Mike, the RTI work at the high school is particularly notably challenging and often the last hurdle for districts because of schedules, logistics, and some of the way structures at the high school work. So the data collection is the first point in that, so we're excited to get that started.
So Lori, how does that actually work,
right
at the lowest level? I mean, are these students interviewed by?
No, these are electronic, they're online screeners, so the students all log in online and take an assessment, and most of the assessments are based on their ability, so typically they get harder. The farther you can go, it will keep going, and whenever you max out, it will slow down, so it generally feels very successful to all kids and gives us comparative data across standards and skill sets and really helps to hone in on what students need if there's any gaps.
And are all these students comfortable with using an electronic?
I hope so, because they're all taking the MCAS online,
Yeah.
so
Okay,
yes.
so, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, it's shown probably anecdotally so far, but districts that are doing online screeners, it is an absolute benefit to the kids that they've done assessments online prior to the MCAS, which is now mandated online. So I think our kids are very comfortable in a one-to-one environment. They quickly become very comfortable. It also means there's a lot of facility with the scoring and the response. Gathering the data is really streamlined, and you're just working from the data rather than years ago, before some of these tools were available, we get really bogged in the data collection itself. And by the time you got it all figured out, you were pretty well into the school year. So this makes it all pretty live and ready to go. So, good question, yeah. The Innovation Lab, you noticed the Ripley room here is under construction. We are running slower on schedule than we would have hoped, but we're making progress, significant progress. So what the plan is now, we will open the year with the way we operated last year, with the kids coming over and using conference room 1 and making sure we don't miss any time on the exposure and experience. We do expect the lab to be open by late October. Anyway, ongoing list of delays and materials being available and just things we didn't necessarily have control over, but construction. But we're excited. I think the vision is really taking shape, and to then imagine what we've already experienced and will experience in conference room 1 in that setting just is really exciting. Again, thanks to the Education Fund, they broke from their typical funding guideline and are funding appropriate furniture for the space. They normally don't fund furniture, so we're really grateful that they're helping us round out the project, and it will be exciting. We're going to have to get everybody in to see once it's up and running, so it'll be great. I mentioned the special education reviews that we're working our way through, and then finally the accountability. The release is on Thursday from the state. This is brand new baselines with a whole new structure, so we'll tell you that you should forget everything you've ever heard about previous MCAS reporting. In fact, the words today from the DESE was, don't reference the other stuff. It's not the same, it's not apples to apples, it's a new starting point. We've worked with the state on a little bit of a high school participation rate, and we're granted some positive feedback today. The formulas are very complicated, and in certain cases down in the subgroup level, a couple of students may or may not have an impact. So just in terms of whether they sat for the test or not. So we had some feedback from the state that they positively responded to. So that was encouraging. Yeah, there's a better communication flow if you've got questions about where you landed in the formula. So Kristen will be here later, probably in October, to bring you that information and share with you where we're at. Totally different starting point with new norms, new benchmarks, new tests, except for science. You can rely on what you know for science, but everything else is a fresh start. So,
was this March testing, am I correct?
So it's March through June. March is the ELA portion, math is in May, and the science is in June, early June, so spring.
Are these numbers typically used by high school ranking organizations?
Well, let me take that back. And this will be what might become interesting. There's often especially at the high school level, in terms of how many kids are proficient or better. That's not the rating system anymore, so I expect anybody who's been using it will have to turn it. I think one of the challenges, especially if they're at the national level, is they're trying to compare state to state tests, and it does get very, very cumbersome and frankly misleading, I think, sometimes. So thank you.
Okay, correspondence is next. I believe I only received one email from a resident interested in our schools and asking for suggestions how she can get involved and help. So we continue to be in contact.
And we received one email regarding the middle school, which I think everyone got, with some very good points to consider as we have our conversations and evaluate what we're doing and how we keep them alive while we do it, and all those questions that come up with that. So it's informative and will help steer some conversation, I'm sure.
Okay, next are issues for discussion, and first up are the Concord Carlisle Regional School goals for 18-19. So any suggestions, edits, changes to?
Well, I know a lot of us sent feedback. Joanna collected a lot of it, and I think from different people. I know I see some of my suggestions. I see new things I haven't seen before. Joanna, is there any chance you can kind of walk us through the highlights of what's new here?
Sure.
Since the last time we looked
So
at
since
it?
the last time, I wasn't here, the Concord School Committee discussion.
Yeah.
So I relied on your input of, in particular, the budget development and budget development process to be the feedback.
Right.
I'm assuming from that group, as well as superintendent support and evaluation. There were just a couple comments. These look like what you discussed at that level. So sort of circling in Christine and Mary and those sort of continued conversations about the budget development process, as well as somewhat of the superintendent support and trying to get ahead of sort of what we're on the same page for when we do the evaluation and approach that collectively together. And then the community engagement and communication also was one that you and Bob had, I assume again from those opening up the communication and working harder for that. That's always been a hard one for us. So that is represented there. That's all your work. I just put it in this form.
Okay.
And then I found on the third page, I wasn't, you'll see it's in red because Court, some of these are yours, and technology planning, I wasn't part of those conversations. So I wasn't quite sure, that's probably the most, the goals that probably need the most work as much as any comments on the previous ones, but, and that's not to leave out Christine and Mary, those all up to that point where it's red were discussed at the Concord level as well, so some people have already talked through edits to that. But I wasn't sure, for example, it's the topic or the theme was sustainability, but I wasn't sure what that was in terms of when I looked at the key actions and it talks about athletic fees and community use. I'm guessing it's the sustainability of the campus use or something to that effect, but I could be wrong, Court.
Sure, I have some thoughts on that I can share.
Okay, it was more, came from you, Court, of a discussion I think you were part of that I was
I tried to share a few initial ideas around sustainability in reference to fiscal sustainability. With those items that fall beyond the normal budgetary process, fees being one of them. Because we have multiple definitions of sustainability in play.
Case in point, my thoughts are about environmental.
I was going to say,
Exactly.
So it may mean that, well, one, I didn't get it right because I wasn't really sure. I was just kind of gleaning from the key actions of being about the athletic fees and community use. Maybe we want to break out something that's possibly environmental, something that's the fiscal sustainability, and candidly, there wasn't anything here about the campus, oversight or reconsideration or goals that we might have around what we do on the campus, given all the work that we've been doing the last month.
So you're really speaking to things we are trying to do anyway, and you're saying we've got to capture them more fully here. One, sustainability, environmental. One, sustainability, how do we put into effect fees and other financial measures outside of the normal budget. And then a very big one around where campus oversight is going.
Right. My suggestion would be that you develop a goal for the environmental, you develop a goal for the fiscal, and I develop a goal for the campus that we can then revisit. I mean, trying to do it in real time, all those, but I think if we want to have goals, what is the goal? Maybe kind of taking some time to think through of those three buckets. What a goal would be for those things.
And that was what I struggled with. If we have a responsibility to go back to athletic fees, if we have a responsibility to go back to community use, rental provisions, what is the bucket? And the best I could do was to look at it under a financial bucket.
And on the environmental sustainability piece, just not to scare anybody about what the idea there is. I mean, we have a lot of initiatives underway in buildings and across the district. And my thought is more that we encourage that and that we recognize it and that we, where necessary, attempt to encourage some structure around it. And then the last thing would be state a willingness to consider expenses, operational or capital required to reach sustainability objectives. So, you know, that these, not necessarily that there's an open checkbook on this stuff, but don't discourage something because there's an expense. You know, if it's a valuable piece of environmental sustainability, and you know, bring it to us so we can consider it and see if you know there's general support for it.
So Wally, that what I'm hearing you say is we develop our own sustainability objectives first.
Yeah, what I had written was create a bullet point 1, create a policy describing system-wide sustainability objectives. And that would be really more just taking from what's already being done. And, you know, I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel here. I'm not thinking of this as some sort of a subcommittee or a advisory committee of the school committee. It's just us recognizing all the good work that's being done in the district. And you know, that would be across buildings, grounds, vehicles, and operations. Provide encouragement to reach the objectives by each operating group, which would be building administration, transportation to administration, building and grounds, teaching and learning, and then state willingness to consider expenses. So I don't, you know, and I'm not thinking it's anything more grand than that right now. Certainly could be if committee members wanted to do it, but that was not my intent.
I think that makes sense. I think it's important that it's high on our radar and priority list, and yet at the same time, in terms of something more grand, when we look at this and we're up to, I think that makes 13 goals if we make all of it.
Yeah,
we've a lot on our plate here, and so I think some of
significant.
Right. So I think the discussion tonight might need to be about, okay, let's not wordsmith each of these goals, but let's look at what we have here as high-level goals and kind of filter a little bit to make sure they're all high priority and realistic, because we have a lot on here right now.
I had a couple more to add.
No, I mean, your point is well taken.
Yeah.
It is.
No, and I agree. Everything that people keep saying, I keep thinking, oh yeah, that's a good idea. We should do that. Oh yeah, we should do that.
That's a good point.
My husband would sit here and say, this is what you do at home, you're overcommitting. But we don't want to all overcommit at the same time.
So one of these would be to expand the number of members of the school.
That's right.
Hire minions, I think would be better.
Right.
You know, in terms of sustainability, I know I've mentioned it and I'm going to start executing in October. I have felt the need for some support to me personally, because this is where most of those ideas are landing right now, and it doesn't feel quite right that I may be the singleton yay or nayer. So I had envisioned the superintendent's kind of advisory committee of various stakeholders, including some of the community group representatives and members within the school system, probably one of you, to just have a vetting spot on a regular basis to say, that's a great idea, let's bring it to the sustainability committee, because there's more ideas than we can keep up with, I think, which is a great thing, and some need more time, and some we can do right away, and I would like more input into that level and some choreography, so the left and right hands know what each other's doing. So that is already on my list of it's not going to make the goals, it's not going to make anything formal, other than I need some people to talk with regularly on those things. So I don't know if that maybe satisfies enough of the need for tonight. Maybe don't need a full goal, because we'll certainly be sharing out what's coming.
Or that
it can be there and we know,
it can be there.
good, that's not a big, it's not big on our to-do list. It can
Yeah.
be there and we can support that initiative.
But I also
without-
like goals that are achievable.
Yeah,
And
that's a good
so
thing.
if the goal actually is this year to develop a superintendent's, committee of sustainability that that would involve stakeholders from the community, the schools, and the school committee, I think, at least getting that and having that in place and saying we've accomplished that would be a goal in and of itself.
Definitely.
And it'll parallel the safety group that I got together last spring, and that's going to continue on with the emergency providers and our internal people, and continuing to reflect back on how we're operating now.
Would it operate like a steering committee of sorts?
I mean, I keep using superintendent's advisory kind of committee for lack of another word, but I'm open to suggestions.
And Mary, can you share with us ideas that you might be working on?
So, you mean the other goals I
Yes,
mentioned?
correct.
Yeah, so we don't have anything on here about coming up with any kind of plan after the feasibility study. What's our plan for the Springtown meeting?
So that's where in red lettering was, we got to have something, what's our goal for that, I agree.
Okay.
And that does need to be articulated, again, something that we can.
And would that be something that the the oversight committee would kind of come forward with particular ideas and then for the full committee to consider at a following meeting?
I would say actually Mary or you or I just takes a stab at what that goal reasonably could be, or maybe one of us tries it and the other looks at it, or
I would say it doesn't have to be something so specific that committee has to agreement on, because you're not going to know yet until we get the study. But
right. But in essence, I'm just trying to be efficient with getting to a goal.
Yep.
Where we start to form that as we approach what happens at town meeting, because then we can have a goal.
I'll take that on for our next meeting.
Okay, I think that's a good way to do it.
Joanna, if I could go back to the community engagement and communication.
Yes.
In number 1, I think we should make the number 1 more broad and not list the places that we're going to communicate through, disseminate information through. Let's let the goal make that list as opposed to us prescribing what the goal will solve, how the goal will be solved. Because I'm not so sure this is the right list, and I don't want us to assume that this is the only list.
Okay. Yeah, this is something Bob and I have worked on and off for a while, and this was kind of the list we came to, and that's why we added others as needed, so that it is certainly a moving list.
That we really need to look at this.
Yes.
This is a really important thing.
Right,
So
and
we
how
have
to do
develop
it,
the
so.
list as opposed to what we're doing here.
Thank you for developing it there.
Oh,
But-
no problem.
but-
Yeah, no, I agree. We need to keep moving on it.
Really look at it.
And you have so much experience in this, I think it'd be great
Well,
if
not
you
so
could
much,
get
but I'd be happy to help
involved in
out.
this.
Yeah.
That would be terrific.
So to that point, Christine, when you continue down the other sort of key actions, do those feel?
No, those felt fine to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's
I'm fine with taking out the list, and we just have
just take out the
ensure
list.
dissemination of information
Exactly.
through various
Yeah.
vehicles. And that's all I need.
So number 4 says to use the webpage.
Well, yeah. Well, but
And I had said, we'll put the website as number 1 in the list of bullets, but
I think that's
I
assumed in
guess
number
we can
1.
do away with number 4.
Yeah.
It's just another method.
It's a venue, yeah.
Allow, to your point, Christine, allow the goal to actually inform
3, 4,
where you're going
5.
to do it. Like
Right, so you could almost take off number 3 too.
That's true, if it's
Yeah.
just one of the vehicles that we're gonna.
So these- see, this is also
That one's
number 5.
highlighted because it needs more, because the subscriber list needs.
Yeah, but if we may
more
not
work to
determine
going,
that
but
that's.
it can be part of,
See, this
part of
folder
it,
just
not
got smaller, so you can have a sheet of paper.
There we go, I love it.
So you take off 3 and 4 and you're
Yeah,
saying.
so before you just take out 4,
Yeah.
one thought is that, my thought at least in having it there was, I know sometimes people find the website kind of frustrating and hard to find information.
it's just massive.
And without, right, but now, and I would say this without, I know there's been some work done on it that was big back-end work, which is important. And I'm not suggesting we do a big back-end overhaul again, because that's not realistic.
That's
But
good,
there
because
are-
I think I'll have people quit.
No. And I think, so
There are people who spend an enormous amount of time
Exactly.
reading what is there, so you're right, we need to
I want to
that.
be careful. I don't want to misspeak. What's been done to kind of create it in the back end and all of that is fabulous. We have a great structure there. I think there's some work that we could done even on rewording things. Like, if you want to find some information and you're not used to going and looking at the school committee site, the link to find anything, the agendas is current fiscal year meetings. Well, if I'm not looking for that specifically, I'm lost by current fiscal. If I'm just because I'm looking for agendas, not current fiscal something, right? So I think we could just
let's leave that one on there.
reword things to make it a little more
Yeah.
user friendly. That's just one example. But so not to redo the website, but to just
We did that- we did that to
the
the
wording
Carlisle
and
site.
navigation a little more user
We
friendly.
did that, it sounded very litigious in Carlisle. It sounded like, you were in a court of law trying to read it.
Right.
So we
Let's
just softened the
make it
language. to make it
user-friendly.
User-friendly.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what we need. Is just softening.
So what would the
language.
word be instead of leverage the website to make it go up? I mean, to make an action.
Maximize use of the website, communication.
Maximize it or
Implicit in that is. it's gotta
Improve
be
user
friendly.
friendliness. Is that a term?
We know what you mean.
I don't know if that's
improve the user
official
experience.
sound. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Improve
fine.
user experience. Thank you.
UX, just put UX.
Okay.
So Mary, you had another one? Or?
Let's see. You had said last time you talked about having a refresher on open meeting law, and that wasn't on here. That would be the easy.
That's
working
that's
on
right.
that.
We're
I don't know if it's going to be available.
But that
We're
would be-
scheduling that.
Okay. And this may be a big one, but there's a couple people rolling off. I thought transition planning for the
Yes.
school committee.
I
kind of-
think
That's a good thought. I hadn't thought about that, but hadn't thought about it as a
Bill
whole.
Fink talked, like isn't there a chair's notebook kind of, like a training manual?
He wanted to
But he-
make one.
But I
Yeah,
thought there
there's
were bits and.
You don't point at me.
what I'm saying, did you get one of those?
No, I didn't get
That's what I'm
one.
saying, I didn't either, so I don't know what that refers to.
I think he had an
No, I wasn't
idea.
pointing at you.
To help.
It's, I mean, I've been doing this too long, like, for anybody that's sort of new, like,
Right.
are there
things like,
ways?
it's in Ripley. What is
Yeah,
it?
right.
What is Ripley?
You know, Todd, we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes, and my
Remember that?
understanding is that it would take a new member like myself some months to
Years.
fully absorb.
Yes.
But is there a way to help with that?
Exactly,
Yeah.
that's what you're
That's-
saying.
that's-
That's what you're
something
saying.
to go to.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Because we refer to institutional memory as a person. Well, if
Right.
that person leaves, that memory
That's right.
goes. So we need to have institutional memory in
So
more
Bill doesn't
ways.
have anything else to do these days.
Right.
Well, and on the other end of that is, there are new people to the story.
Yes.
Right.
And so, we use a lot of vernacular, and we use a lot of, Ripley, and it's in, like somebody said, the community room in Carlisle. It's like, well, people live in Carlisle, you don't know where that is.
Even
Yeah.
if you do live in Carlisle.
You might not. So
We're like, where's
I mean,
that?
it took me a while as a school committee member to figure out how you guys present the meetings. And it was sort of like, a couple of you guys were great and we met for coffee and stuff like that, but it didn't get me to the nuts and bolts of this. So I think that
And some of it is trial by fire, like learn by doing, whatever. But
Yeah.
are there things that we could, I'll call it a
Yeah.
manual, user guide that we can put together that
Yeah.
would help?
Well, and as chair, the things that you're expected to do throughout.
Like a calendar, yeah.
Right. By the way, it's October. You're supposed to
Timeline.
boom, boom, boom.
There is a bit of a model. Concord town government. The schools were somewhat absent from the process, although there were a few people. Brought together every committee head in town and had a Saturday training session at the high school. We hosted it at the high school. And there was the open meeting section, and there was the agenda section, and there was the managing a meeting section, and there was
I love
the
it.
where archives sit and how to access them section.
It's actually coming up on the
Is that-
20th.
I was just gonna say that, yeah.
we've done
So
this.
there is a model.
I've been to
Yeah,
that.
It does exist.
It does.
Does,
We got it
But
today.
it's
Yeah.
more a
You
town
did.
government.
Yeah.
We haven't
Town
fully.
government.
The
generic.
select
Town
board,
governance.
the select board
Made
sponsors
our own
it.
Exactly.
here.
Yep,
No.
yep.
Oh, right, do a
What are you
school
saying?
version of it.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
that's
And
completely relevant
the
to us.
reason we didn't get deeper into it was because the way the schools in the town operates are somewhat different.
Oh.
legislatively and otherwise.
Right.
So there was plenty of crossover, but then plenty of areas where crossover would not be helpful.
Well, we have talked about doing a meeting law session, and what was the other session we talked about doing?
What about superintendent?
That's on here.
That is on
Right,
here.
and that, but it just seems to me maybe we could merge all of these. There might be an opportunity instead of, I think, candidly making a notebook or something that really nails it would be a lot of work and very hard, although very helpful. Maybe there's a hybrid of we plan for in the fall open meeting, a session, a 3-hour session or something, includes open meeting law, role of school committee, and
But open meeting law is
and
done when you come to the school committee.
Is what?
When you go on to the school committee, I forget what organization does
MASC.
that.
Right, you gotta
The
do
MASC
three.
does that.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't have to have some people sit through that twice, because you have to sit through it before you're put on your school committee.
So charting the course is the
Right.
program called.
Yeah.
Is what the program is called.
But maybe it's
too long
sort
ago
of
for you, Joanne.
the the things a new, like, you need to do this, and you
Right.
need to, then in the fall, we do this, and.
Focused on what's done locally here between
Yeah.
Concord and Carlisle.
Right,
and so forth.
on our
I think
subcommittees.
I think that's an excellent idea.
And I don't think you have to figure it out tonight. Your goal could be that
Yeah.
you're going to
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Lori.
So-
We're working. We're trying to figure out if we can figure this
Yeah.
out.
All right.
So I'll work on that.
All right.
Okay?
You got
I'll
it.
work on that and I'll consult, whatever.
Okay.
Great.
If there was nothing
Can
more
I-
than the ingredients of that kit.
Yeah, that's what
you'd
some
be in
kind of
good shape.
outline.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just one thought, rather, it might be worth checking with some other school committees to see if somebody's got it.
That's a good idea. Yeah,
Change the name.
Yeah,
Rather than
absolutely.
create it all.
Just
Yeah,
search
yeah.
and replace.
Ask Melissa too. I'm pretty sure Melissa put together like here's the schedule of things that go on, like budget, big picture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great idea.
I think she did it for Carlisle.
Okay, I'll
Yeah,
check
it
with
was-
it.
Does that sound?
Just go back and transcribe everything that Kathy Snook thought first.
That's another
Every
way.
year.
Well, that's a good idea.
I did just want to comment, I see the goal on the agreement, and we are in full support of the regional agreement being looked at. We spent some time in it this afternoon, actually, our budget. I don't know how we got there. The budget conversations we were having led us over there. 1957 with 3 amendments. It needs a look. There's a lot of other pieces of there's a lot of other ways to structure a regional agreement that weren't in place in 1957, including other legislation that may or may not need to pertain. But it's definitely a worthwhile activity. Even if you don't change a thing, it's worth taking a look at. So.
Could we look at any comments people have about the quote-unquote "to ensure" statement there? Is that really what we're about?
Yeah, I wasn't sure that
Goals?
aligned with
Yeah, I
the
just-
agreement.
Where are you?
Yeah, why?
Under regional agreement.
Regional agreement.
To ensure.
I don't know enough about the contents of that agreement, to be quite frank with you, to
Yeah,
know
you-
if this should be the thrust of that review or
Yeah,
not.
that's.
No, it's
kind of
completely a
what-
fiscal
To what
agreement.
end?
Yeah.
It's a fiscal agreement, period.
It's period, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So then it's fiscally sustainable practices for budgeting and long-term forecasting, perhaps.
That's appropriate for what that does.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, it certainly would be a consideration as you're looking at what the
So-
options are and
so-
how the agreement could be structured. Yeah.
This strikes me as a lot of work, and I think the
It's a
town
big one.
meetings, and probably somebody at DESI or at the stage, right? Somebody.
Yeah, we're going to
someone's
reach
gotta
out
weigh
to
in on
MARS,
this, right?
the Association of Regional Schools. Jared's well connected there, so we just thought that was a good starting place. They do this.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to say.
Yeah, so I actually reached out to them tonight, right before this meeting. We do have.
We had a long talk about this today, so he had already reached out.
Motivated.
Yes, I have had experience with this in the past district. We did hire them as a consultant, but we did have to bid this out. So it's something that you will have to bid out.
What are we bidding out?
Bidding out someone to walk,
Oh, like legal
consultants to walk you through the regional agreement.
I think you'll need a first pass at it, though, to even know if that's an interest to you.
Well, perhaps then a goal for this year could be to make the plan to achieve this review, because you're suggesting there's more to it than 2 of us
Yeah, there's the phase of getting informed enough to know if you want to relook at the agreement, and then if you actually want to open the agreement, that's a whole, that's what Jared's talking about.
Let's push
Opening
this
the
out
agreement is
so
a
we do it
big
right.
project.
So maybe we get informed and educated on the
Right.
agreement is the goal.
Right, and establish whether or not, establish a plan for next steps.
Right.
Okay, I'll do that one.
Mary, you quickly convinced us we're not going to do it.
I mean, I've read it,
In
it's
this
a
year.
boring agreement.
Yeah.
Kind of,
But we want to do it with care.
Right,
and
what are we
got
trying to get
lots
out of it, I
like,
think
you
is
know.
the point, right?
Well, what we heard in previous meetings, I believe, was what we want to get out of it is to ask the question, can we reduce any discernible peaks and valleys in the formula for the respective towns? Is that where this was coming from? Okay,
Right.
so we'll look at it.
Yeah, sure.
See if there are ways.
Okay.
I think the rest of mine were just nits. And we're not trying to cover all the nitty gritty.
No.
Right?
Do you want to
So-
give me your edits of nits or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so you guys started this for Concord, so we should have two separate documents.
Correct.
And I think we did at some point, but.
We do. I
still do.
I have an edited version of the Concord one
Yeah.
that we looked at,
So
that I didn't bring
obviously I-
tonight,
okay.
but
Yeah,
that it does line up and like it did last year with several of the first
Like
ones.
90% of them are
Right, most of
Yeah.
them should
same,
be
Yeah.
but.
verbatim.
Until you get to the high school.
So maybe,
Right,
okay.
the high
Yes.
school versus
Yep.
the middle school,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'll follow up with you with.
That'd be great.
My other edits, okay.
That'd be great. And the only other new one I would like, if anyone had any sort of tweaks to the technology planning, was also a brand new one, sort of at the high school and a more sustainable model, which I know you guys are already working on. I'm not sure it's a goal for us. Or not, because I know you're already.
Yeah, we're going to be bringing you a 5-year plan as part of the budget process. We can go broader than that if it's, I see some of the things here, probably a bigger picture than that, not just the actual fiscal side. So it's all going to be there, I think. So.
I mean, I might suggest we, given that this is a long, meaty list, allow for that and maybe inform something for the next year.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think it has to rise to a gold level here if it's going to come at us through a plan and then a subsequent budget, many budget conversations.
Yep.
As well as through this strategic planning initiatives,
Yes.
right? I feel like
Comes
it's
out
of
it.
important there, the technology questions
The
coming out of-
instructional side
the
is the
instructional
strategic
piece.
plan, the fiscal side is going to come through the budget.
Yeah.
Right.
So
We're not
gonna go.
achieving in this goal, we're reviewing or considering or something, right?
Well,
Like,
yes,
the
or we're
suggestion now is
taking
take it
it
out,
out.
take it out,
Entirely.
because,
We're dropping it out
because Lori's
we're
addressing it in
comfortable it's
two
gonna
other
happen.
places.
Okay,
Sounds
There we
good.
go.
The town meeting is talking about that's going to be.
all right. I think I have it, and I expect some edits and a couple of you to take on a goal.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else on goals?
Thanks for all that
let's go.
background, Joanna.
Yeah.
Move to reviewing the RFP bid results.
So as you know, the bid deadline was September 12th. So we had 30 to 40 different parties pull the bid. At least 10 different groups came to the mandatory walkthrough, but we only got 2 proposals. So the selection committee met on the 14th, and we went through the 2 bids. The first thing we did was we opened up the technical proposal, and we scored those. And then we moved on who scored higher. Gale Associates scored higher on the technical proposal. So we opened up the bid. The bid contained a base bid of $49,520. And based on that, we're recommending vote to award the contract to Gale Associates.
So you want to talk a little bit about how it's so low relative to
Sure.
what we expected?
We like good news, and
Yes.
can you explain to us how they're going to do it efficiently for so much less than we expected?
Thanks. So, and I also have, well, first, why don't I pass out some of the RFPs that they submitted? I have 4 of those if you guys want to take a look at these. Gail did work with CCI Play, was it last year?
least that.
Yeah, so
I think if,
Yeah, no, they've got a long history there.
So they are familiar with the campus. But as you know, when we started this process in the Sustainability Committee, we were not experts on what the amount of the feasibility for the campus would be. So we reached out to 3 firms. We got 2 potential quote proposals that anywhere from 150 to 200,000. That's what we anticipated when we gave them the scope of work. And Gale was not one of those companies that we solicited for that. But based on all of the criteria that we went through for the technical proposal, and I think you can see in their proposal, it's pretty well thought out. They scored pretty much a perfect score on the tech proposal. Everything that our criteria, they met, and we feel comfortable, and especially after speaking to them, that they can do everything that we asked for and meet the time proposals that we put in the select bid.
So Jared, I'm trying to follow your timeline and experience. You followed up with them after, just to kind of, I assume, confirm you're aware of all that we've asked, because we're expecting higher numbers. I mean, not that you said that, but that was the nature of the follow-up, and let's be sure that you understand what we're hoping to get out of it.
Pretty much went through the list, and you'll see that in there, everything is in that list, is in their proposal, and they said absolutely we can do that.
And in the timeline.
In the timeline.
And reference checking?
Is
that?
Yeah.
That's already happened? Or?
We've done all of that. As you can see in that, they provided multiple. We even called CC at play.
I was going to say we have.
So we did multiple reference checks.
Okay, great.
it's exciting. I mean, I will say, we thought we were going to have to ask for and put out a lot more for this, so it's a great thing.
Well, I'm assuming some of it is that they have such knowledge of the campus
Exactly.
already.
It's great that they have experience with the campus and can jump in.
Wow. Well, that's very positive. That's great.
It is.
Unexpected.
And I think it drives a lot of thought, because it looped me right back to the discomfort I had last spring when we didn't put the article forward for the paving. It goes to show that the bid process matters, and perhaps this will be a mode we get into more often where we put it out contingent on funding, so we have very accurate numbers to work for. Because we don't want to over-ask. We emphatically don't want to over-ask, and yet you only have information as you have it, but this proved to bring forward a whole other option set that we didn't even know was out there.
Well, I have to say, I've never done it that way that we did this time, and because of the short timeline, we came up with that, thanks to both of you. But this underscores how important that could be to when we go to town meeting with requests, that we actually, if you go with something like this, you have a very real number
And
versus estimates.
To your point about requests, this idea of what will happen in the future, I think everybody in the hall tonight can sort of say this, but I'm not sure everybody who might view us on TV knows that this feasibility study is simply that. It's feasibility. It will inform us, it'll educate us about what is possible, short-term, medium-term, long-term, and it does not imply or suggest an agenda, because there is none at this point. There are a number of ideas. There are some people with sentiments about different wants and needs in the community and the larger community and the high school community. But none of that presumes that we have a plan here, nor should we. So I think we need to just repeat that frequently so that people understand. Feasibility simply enables us to make a decision in the future that doesn't create unforeseen problems with other potential changes or improvements 1 year, 20 years down the line.
And also to your point, Court, if we were to choose something, if we even, chose to do one of the things outside of this before, you'd have to do a feasibility study of said thing anyway, an engineered study of what the calculations of impervious surface were and where and et cetera, and siting and all those. And so to do it in this way allows for our 3 to 5 year plan to look at and say, as we look and start to prioritize and consider where and how, and one doesn't preclude the other, or we know that one will preclude another.
Right. Yep.
Or that we'll even receive permitting from the town of Concord, which I think if there's a lesson in the last year of the campus that I've learned is we do need professional help with that. It's not a layperson's endeavor to give them the information they need in order to give us the go-ahead on any project. So I think I've come to feel like we have to reverse that order and start with the plan and the town commissions and boards, and then we can go forward. Doing it the other way around is sometimes going to not work. So there's a lot of great news here. We were all surprised. But it looks like a really positive thing.
Yeah.
I just want to point out one thing, because the way we just described this is, I agree with in totality, but we do have an issue with paving, lighting,
Indeed.
and sidewalks that we attempted to put an article on the warrant in April, this past April, and for various reasons we weren't able to do that. And that's a piece of this.
Yes.
So, we may very well get something back from this that gives us an understanding of how to deal with those issues without preventing us from doing other things down the road, which is part of this. So I don't want us to describe this purely as a 3 to 5 year plan, because
it's got
there's some things that we may
well.
very well be coming back to the next day.
It allows conversations to continue right now that are pretty forestalled until we do this.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work from
So
us,
Yeah.
meeting with us, prioritizing, understanding.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And this is it. We vote on this later tonight, so right now it's just discussing, right?
Yeah. Okay, any other comments, questions? So next we'll talk about special town meeting coffees and the forums. Several of us attended the coffees. They were not heavily attended by the public, but some very in-depth discussions took place by what I would consider more or less leaders in the community, and so they were very worthwhile. We have upcoming 2 forums on Wednesday the 26th at the Carlisle School Community Room, and Thursday at 6:30, and also at 6:30 on Wednesday, but on Thursday at 6:30 we have a forum at the high school Learning Commons.
So may I just follow up with that? Because when the agenda was put out on Friday, that is what we thought we were talking about tonight. We've had new information since then that this agenda item is now all things special town meeting related, and so we need to give updates and I think have some conversation based on the new information. The combination of several things falling all at once. On Friday, we got notice of our actual special education circuit breaker reimbursement rate. You will remember a year ago this time, the state actually reduced the number mid-fiscal year. By the later part of the year, the legislators had advocated and the FY18 number bounced back up. Shortly thereafter, and we're talking late, the number also was looked at into FY19. And so on Friday, we were noticed of the return to 72% and the subsequent funds attached to that in both districts. So on Friday, the region received $100,000 unexpected. Prior to that, we had received almost $23,000 in Metco, also adjustments. This never happens, right? You know that. Unexpected revenues coming in September. So the combination of those events all happening within a very short time frame led to discussions of the need to reflect on where we are at fiscally. If you had asked me in May, could we afford anything in the warrant articles, the answer was no. If you'd asked me in July, the answer was no. If you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, the answer was no. And now suddenly, as of the last few days, the combination of the low bid, again, if that had come in at $200, $150 or $200,000, I would not be bringing this to you in this format. But the combination of all those things aligning, I think, breeds some responsibility on our part to talk about whether we need to move those articles forward, or do we have other options within our own operating budget now that we certainly did not anticipate having. So I'm going to just open it up at that. I think there's 2 articles we were talking about, the first for the $100,000 and the 4 projects within that, one being the drainage and then some things that never were finished after the building project, and obviously the second being the bid you just saw. So those are I think, conversations we need to have now that there's some unexpected funds available that suddenly make this a different discussion. So I think we need to talk on that and make sure we're all sure that we know what thing is we need to do next.
So we have several options, really. You know, we can move both articles, move one.
Wait, sorry, before we start talking about that, I just need to understand the numbers. The circuit breaker, you said returned to 72%, and we budgeted for 65%, okay.
Yeah, we were counting on another reduction because of how the pattern had started last year.
Yeah, okay, and I remember that conversation over a year ago, actually, about that. And likewise, the Metco adjustment was a result of...
The good news is there's been more advocacy at the state level so that Metco formula gets reviewed and starts to get closer to what the costs can be. There's always operating costs that all districts have carried, especially with 135 kids. So at the high school level, that's the formula adjustment that they made.
And when we receive this, what are our constraints with that money? Are we legally bound to do certain things?
So that money needs to go to special ed and Metco, but that will allow us offsets because it will free other funds that were allocated to those places will get freed up.
Okay.
And just to review, since you're on the numbers for everybody here, so this comes to a total of $123,000. What we have in our warrants right now equals, we have $100,000 in one and $200,000 in the other. So we have the equivalent of $300,000.
So that might be my cue to give you my recommendation as the starting point, because you don't have enough suddenly available to cover all 150. We've been talking a lot about this over the last 48, not even 48 hours. My recommendation right now would be to consider not moving the articles. And there's several fold, we can talk on why.
Either of them, you're saying?
Either of them. Because we do have the bulk available that would get us in the right direction. Just because we're so immersed in trying to settle and stabilize the budget for FY19 and so early in the school year, my recommendation would be to take care of the drainage issue. We have a deadline that must be met. Finish the drainage issue. The other 3 projects are important and they are safety issues, and they certainly need to get done. I feel strongly before we get all the way to another town meeting, but I think we'd have to space those out just a little bit as the fiscal year stabilizes a bit. Once we're through the months of October, we're in a much different place in terms of assuring we know what we have and how it's all working as school starts. To then spread the other 3 out as the year goes on. Go ahead, you have a question?
Yeah, no, I mean, then you're considering actually paying for those out of the budget rather than...
I am.
Yeah, okay.
I am.
And just to clarify, because I just made the point, it was 300 and now we have 125, but it's not actually 300 we need now because of this bid, which is 50, not 200. So we're talking a need of 150, not 300.
With 125 and
exactly
unanticipated revenue. And then I would recommend funding the feasibility study through the operating budget, given what's available now. I think that allows us to not have the towns, both towns, this is both towns, I've been traveling shows here in both communities, adding borrowing on when we have available operating funds, I think is worth some reflection on our part. So that's my recommendation. It's up for discussion, but I thought I'd share where I'm at.
That's very helpful, thank you. And
I'd love to make a comment and then ask a question. My comment, first of all, is thank you for bringing this to us, because I feel strongly that we've been saying for a long time, especially about these, but also for a long time, when we ask for money, we need it, and if we don't really need it, we won't ask for it.
That's right.
And this is this is when we need to live up to that, which isn't to say necessarily all of a sudden we take it off without thinking about whether we can handle it, but that this conversation is critical, and I'm very glad we're having it, because if we don't really need it as a separate ask, I want to make sure that we don't ask for it. So thank you for bringing this. Then in terms of let's get down to the nitty gritty of can we really manage it. So we're talking 125 or 123 in, let's say, found revenue, 150 in needs. You talked about the fact that in terms of the expenses, the work on the high school this year, some of it could be spread out over the year, given timing and seeing where we are, and all of the work that Jared's been doing on budgeting and finding efficiencies and that kind of stuff. Do you feel like we could make up that gap, so to speak, of 25,000 between two and two?
We do, or we wouldn't be saying that.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. Just through the zero-based process, we're finding efficiencies.
Right.
And we recognize enough right now that we think we can cover that.
That's awesome.
Great.
Right there.
Yeah, excellent.
And those are reorganizations, those are just looking at how we're spending, where we're buying from. It's really low-level stuff, most of it, but we're already making progress.
And so on those things that need to be done at the high school, once we address the drainage, which is first, and then I know there was emergency shower, there were curb cuts, the other things. As we're spreading them out, they're still all considered high priority. You said
They
to
are.
get done before town meeting.
They are.
Okay.
They definitely are.
Okay, good.
I think I feel strongly they probably should have been addressed before, even right now.
Right.
But,
Which we were attempting to do.
they were part of that article back in
Exactly.
spring.
Yeah,
So I just want to remind you of that. They're not new discussion points.
They're absolutely.
So we haven't changed
overdue
the
needs.
need. We're just trying to be thoughtful with the money and what's available in the process.
A couple of comments, and I think every year since I've been on the school committee, we've had a supplemental appropriation warrant article. We haven't moved it every year, and it was defeated one year. Normally I would look at this and say, great that we got more money from the state than we expected. We went into the year with a budget that we were concerned about from the start. And I would look at it and say, in a month into the school year, we shouldn't be spending the money. But based on what we have heard from Jared and Maury about how the fiscal year 20 budget's going, I think this is an appropriate approach to not move these articles. But I would say that with the understanding that we don't know what the winter's going to be like. We don't know about any additional special ed costs. And we've been chewing on our E&D for years now. And we're going to be back with a discussion about OPEB and funding that. We're trying to get so we're fully funding that. So all of those things are important to consider here. And I don't want us to go into this thinking, all of a sudden we've got a whole bunch of money. It's just we think we can cover these costs now, but we could have events over the course of the year that would require a supplemental appropriation for the region for fiscal year 19 in the coming town meeting. And I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, but we weren't,
Because I think we need to
Good
be,
thoughts.
we need to be aware of that, the community needs to be aware of that. But I do think that, based on where we are and what we're anticipating and the great work that Jared and Maury are doing on the upcoming budget, that, this is, I'm sort of right on the edge. Is this the right approach, or is the right approach to continue with the warrant articles? But
I mean, I wish the town meeting was a month out from now and we could
Yeah.
make that
Key
decision
thing.
then, but
Yeah.
we
we have
can't.
a better idea.
That's,
So that's, I just say it with, in my head, there's that caveat of, we have to see how fiscal year 19 plays out. I mean, the budget we're working on is fiscal year 20, not fiscal year 19.
But Wally, even if we got this money is earmarked for things that are not on the list you were just concerned about. So we were gonna have to survive through those issues
correct.
either way.
Say that again?
You listed a number of things that you're concerned about that might pop up in the budget year coming up. But the money that we were going to borrow was earmarked for none of those things. So those things were gonna come or go either way. There's no way that this money would affect what you're saying, because
But it has an
No,
effect in the
because
sense
it's in
that
the fiscal year 19
if we,
coffers.
right, if we're using operating dollars to cover these things instead of asking through town meeting, those are operating dollars that could cover, let's say, high winter expenses if they
So
can't.
the monies from the state are coming into the fiscal year 19.
yeah, I realize that. But I don't think it's, I guess my 2 cents is I don't think it's right for us to hold funds back.
In case.
That's,
Right, just in case, and that becomes the question.
you know, we talked a lot.
I don't think that's appropriate. Yeah, I don't think
But
we should
I'm
be
also-
borrowing money just in case.
But I think it would be, I don't think it would be responsible for us to do it without bringing those things up.
Right.
We talked a lot about E&D because you'll remember how we got this budget
We
done.
need to put some money into it.
And that is probably our biggest concern, that in a perfect world where these warrants weren't part of the discussion, we would just feel like that was a better way to rebuild E&D when we get unexpected revenues. But in good faith, we couldn't recommend that, knowing we have proposals out for borrowing,
Right.
so.
Right.
I agree.
So I kind of start to feel like this all, and this will sound familiar, a lot of it comes down to communication, right? Getting the word out. And in 2 different ways. One of them, I think, and I am leaning towards saying, I don't think we should move these, because if we don't need it, we shouldn't ask. And that said, I think the communication around that is critical.
Absolutely.
And one of the pieces that's critical to communicate is exactly what you just said, Wally, that we are, it means we're gonna still be playing it close. And we're only asking for what we know we need, which means if other needs come up, we might have to ask again. And the second, this is another, I guess, twist on it, or another piece of the communication. I want to make sure that our reasonings and this discussion is communicated out somehow clearly as well. Only because of the fact that not everybody's watching and listening. And there are going to be people out there who have been questioning these articles about town meeting. Why are they asking? What are they doing? And if they don't hear the full story of why we're not moving it, could come to some other conclusion, like the school committee thought it wasn't going to pass, and so they're trying to, go around us, and it could turn into some other story that has no connection to reality. So I just want to make sure, if we move forward, that we communicate what's actually happening very clearly.
Good point.
And it's complicated.
Yes,
And
yes.
it's not, people like to read headlines.
Right, right.
And so what's.
Sarah will do it.
You get a headline there, Sarah.
There we go, we're counting on you.
So it's
Above the
kind
fold,
of funny because you may recall that Carlisle's having a special town meeting for these warrant articles. And there's one other article that would not have been on the warrant if there weren't these 2. So it is what it is. We deal with that.
Are we going to create
No,
resentment
we've
and
had,
frustration?
there's some need there now. I think
Yeah,
that's
so
sort of
it'll
emerged
have some
as
traction
the
and-
time went on, so.
Okay.
They're
It's still
fine.
valid, it's just sad.
Okay.
But there will be confusion because
Right.
the meeting is next week.
Right,
Both the
and
meetings are
because
next
we
week.
thought we were doing this just for the
People
schools.
So
show
wait,
up and
before
go
we-
up.
Yeah, but before we get that far.
Yeah, I want to just say, I'm uncomfortable just talking about them together. Okay, we have two
Yeah,
articles.
that's a very good point. Two different articles.
I would like to discuss the merits of moving or not moving each one separately, and then just assume we're doing this.
Right, all or nothing. That's very
Because there's an argument for, maybe not doing, maybe moving one of them.
One and not
or
the
not.
other.
So, if we could, I'd rather start with Article 6, or maybe we start with Article 7, because that was the most affected by, that's the one that the bid came in so phenomenally different than we were anticipating.
Article 2, you mean?
And Article 2, sorry, the second of
That's
it.
right.
Well, and I also likewise, before Mary said it, but I was feeling very uncomfortable, we really pushed Carlisle to get on board, and so we asked a lot of them, and as you say, it is what it is, but we're trying to be fiscally responsible, but I want to be careful that we, one, acknowledge sort of that things happened that we just didn't anticipate, and it wasn't, we were being prudent, we were under deadlines by the law to get these things in, so that, because we really need to, we feel we need these things done. And so the second one, only because of the fact that it was the bid that really has, once we got the bid, also felt like, wow, should we go to town meeting asking for $50,000? When, in fact, each town meeting's portion of that is even less.
Right.
Why,
Right.
when you're talking about what percentage of that is the overall budget, should we go back and really look at this? And then these things start to happen. So I think that's maybe a place to start, that one, and then, I don't know if we probably have to vote, and then go to the next one and sort of just approach them separately.
This is maybe way out of line, but if we do the feasibility study and we get the results in December or January, and we haven't.
Could we speak up? I guess
Sorry,
the audience isn't
so
able to-
we have, if we go forward and fund the feasibility study, I guess regardless of how we do that, but, and we hold off on the 4 projects in the $100,000 article, or we do the drainage, which is 25. That leaves us some pool of money, and let's say the study comes out with, you can get 100, some number of parking spaces for $30,000. How do we prioritize that against the other 3 projects? Like, I want to be very mindful of how we prioritize these things. Because I think, a few months from now, we may have some other priorities.
Well, my sense is, and again, is that the things on that list of the $100,000 are things that we need to do before we do anything else.
Yeah.
New.
If that's our position, then.
And in part because some of it's a promise to the town, and we never got to the curb cut or those things, and kind of fell through the communication gaps. But, so, if that were to happen, it would happen after another month's time in school, and how we even, if and when and how we address the remaining. I agree with the approach of the most imminent, but anyway, it's a good question, but I think those, my understanding is those have to happen
They're sort of
before.
in line in front of anything else.
Yeah.
And Mary, even if we borrowed the money, those issues would still be there.
Well, they'd be earmarked for those
Yeah.
purposes.
Right, but what I mean is,
We couldn't
we
spend the money.
we spend the 100,000 on the things that we just earmarked, and we do the study for 50,000 or 200,000,
Right,
whatever.
right.
So we were gonna have to move to the next step on how we handle the results of the study anyway.
Yep.
I think the recommendation you make, Lori, is the responsible one, but I do pause at the Article 7 or Article 2 because it's of such a different nature. So I'll go back to the first one in keeping with your suggestion, which I think is sensible. Let's look carefully at each of them. I sense an agreement. I certainly believe that the Article 6 items aren't very negotiable because we've already negotiated them. We've already determined that drainage has to be taken care of. There is a deadline. We keep saying that. We know that. So then we look to the remaining items, and those are all safety related. And so I think the die is cast there too. We've declared them safety related. We all believe it, and so we're going to move ahead on those one way or another. And you said we'll have to find the money one way or another. I said we don't have a particular agenda for what might happen in the coming years at the high school. But that's not to suggest that we didn't already agree around this table that we affirm your concern about the parking. And in fact, we've tried to do some very short-term solutions and they've fallen apart. And the public has watched us try to do that in vain. So we know we do have to move in some way, shape, or form there, I think. I think that consensus will be had around this table and in the community. The question for me, and you can educate me on this, is it unusual for us to move a feasibility study or move ahead with a feasibility study knowing that it could have long-term implications without bringing it to the two towns through a warrant article? Thoughts on that? Would this be...
We've done feasibility studies
that's what I wanted
before
to know. That's what I wanted to know.
we didn't
Okay.
require supplemental funds. So I think the answer is it is appropriate.
Fine, because if this were with the notion that something that most folks can't even foresee might happen someday, then I'd say, no, we bring it before the voters. We throw as much sunshine on it as possibly can be had. But in this case, feasibility is also going to address some shorter term items that we've already talked about here. We just don't know how because the feasibility study hasn't occurred. So
And it
we
gives
stopped
us
at the how.
data, you know,
We
it
get
gives us
stopped at the
data
how.
to make intelligent decisions, you know?
And I think it comes right back to what you said earlier, which is this is about feasibility, not design or plans or anything like that. It's really to inform what we do and what we ask for at the real town meeting.
If you think, I mean, for the last 3 years, this piece of land we're talking about doing a feasibility study on has been in play. Between the landfill, and then we've had extensive discussions about paving and lighting and sidewalks and safety. We've had extensive discussions, as you point out, about parking, including attempting to do a couple of things that in the end weren't feasible from a groundwater standpoint. And we had a campus committee that had ample opportunity for public input about what our thoughts are about that space. And these are all continuations of a project that started years ago to build a new high school.
Correct.
And, you know, as you remember, the landfill was a parking lot. So, you know, we are just sort of continuing on with a process of redesigning the entire campus. And, you know, this is the last meaningful piece of land that anything can be done with. And it, you know, we want to recognize that so that, as you pointed out a few minutes ago, we don't put ourselves in a position where we can't do something down the road without tearing up what we've done, because we need to do some things, and that we do those things we need to do with, you know, our head up and our eyes open about what we might want to do down the road. So, you know, I think, and I do think that, you know, we were going to put a warrant article in front of the previous town meeting for $1 million to do a number of these things. And because of a snafu with the language, we decided not to move that article because it was not clear that we could even do what we had wanted to do with it, and what we needed to do with it. So, you know, this is a bit of sort of trying to recover from that, and then recognizing the things that we have determined from the campus advisory committee and others that, you know, we're moving forward. So, you know, I really am pretty comfortable with the notion that, you know, there's been opportunity. If we had received $400,000 from the state because they went to 85%, an election year after all.
That's right.
Then, you know, and we were still looking at a $200,000 expenditure, then, you know, maybe we'd be talking a different a different tune, but, you know, we've done all, Gail did a lot of work for us, and some of the benefit of that's coming to us here.
So back to Joanna's point, that we should talk about these one at a time, or at least separately. I actually think you almost have to talk about them simultaneously, but separately, because you can't necessarily make a decision about one in a vacuum without considering the other. It's almost a matter of, the three choices are not move either, not move 6 or 1, and not move 7/2, or not move 7/2. You know, so we either ask for 0, we ask for 50, or we ask for 100. And those are kind of the three, at least the way I see it, the three choices there.
Yeah. So you want my opinion?
Yes.
So
We're dying.
I mean, I was like, so we got to decide, right?
Right.
We do.
So I'll start. I think just listening to it and the way you've articulated it, and my thought is, I go back to the 50,000. Just feels like it's too much, you know, for too little. It's just like to ask for that small amount of the town when we have had these particular nice bounces financially, and also because we have a very large budget, and you know, this is a very small portion now. Suddenly we could find it. I think we shouldn't move the feasibility study, Article 7 or 2. I'm going backwards. And the most pressing is the drainage. It must happen. And the other things I hope will happen, again, with the unpredictability, but given that that's 25 and can happen this fall, and if we went to the town and asked for 100,000 for these things, and we have all this other information, I think we could get really criticized for, one, out of budget cycle, and now you're doing this, you don't even know all the full numbers, and you got some numbers last week. 2, you know, we basically have an opportunity to cover the cost of it and not ask out of cycle, and find ourselves much better informed, slow down a little, and manage it with all that you're doing. And I want to point out, it's not really 1 year budget that you need when you come. It's 2 years, because we're on a budget that was, you know, was built a different way and for 15 years, and you're starting a whole new way of looking at it for yet another, you know, not until 20. So all these things are informing us as we go, and it's fluid. But based on your confidence to cover these things, I think we'd be better served not to move the second or first article, 6 or number 1 in Carlisle, and try to do our best as we go to be transparent about how things evolve and what ways we will approach these things that must be done. And I agree, we should be trying to do all of that, not in next town meeting, but within this fiscal year if we can.
And I think being good stewards of our communities means that when we need to go back for something someday, they know that we've done everything we can to not have to do that.
I agree.
I agree with Joanna completely. with the addition that we do all the communication I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
So the only
Totally
thing is, we asked for a special town meeting to
I know.
fund these 4 projects.
Right.
And we're coming up a little shy of them right now. And, you know, we darn well better do these projects. Like, you know,
Oh,
talk about
I'm committed to doing these
prioritizing
projects.
and the
Yeah.
drainage.
We
but
just
You
need a
feel
little bit of
confident that we
time.
could definitely do this.
We're gonna do them, Mary. We
Put
have
them in your goals. Put them in your goals.
Yeah.
You know, but if we said, we're gonna go to the town for a special town meeting for this, they have to be our top priority.
Yeah, they are, and I didn't really interrupt you all, but there's they are the priority. We are gonna turn down other things in order to be able to do that as early as possible.
So I guess we're coming up short, you know.
Overall,
20, 30,000, what, you know,
Yeah.
roughly. Is it worth going to town meeting for that article?
Which comes
Maybe
back to
just
that question, which is
47,000.
why I
It's just a
asked
different
that
way of
question.
financing
Right.
it,
Is
right?
there a way to bridge that gap, based on kind of.
There will be, there is, we're not ready to
efficiencies that
sit
they're
and tell, you know, we're
Right,
still
exactly.
too early in it to give you all the nitty gritty. We wouldn't be sitting here saying this was the recommendation if we didn't know there wasn't.
But you
Can I
have
just
full
find-
confidence that you can get that all done.
Absolutely.
That's.
Can I just point out a procedural thing
Yeah.
that they think this is right? And I understand, and I feel badly about if we end up not moving these, that Carlisle has a town meeting just
People
start
may appreciate
purely
it, it'll make
because
it
of
shorter.
that, which is not the case here in Concord. But if we don't move them, we will not confound the November ballot with 2 ballots and the printing costs and the process necessary to not only have the election that's planned for November 6th, but municipal election as well with a ballot, with 1 or 2 ballot questions for, because these would have been, I think.
No, they're
No,
not.
we would not have been.
No, because we're under 2.5, so it's.
No,
No,
They vote that night.
It says it right
Two-thirds vote
here.
at town meeting.
Yeah.
Yep, no, it's.
okay.
In the box.
In the box, it says it.
Read the box.
The box. Okay, sorry.
I'd like to echo a point that I think Heather was trying to make, and that is that we're going to have to bend over backwards to make it clear that this was not gamesmanship.
No.
Because from down the street, if you
No.
weren't party to this, it
I know.
sort of looks like
I
it. And so the very fact that you receive your communication on, today's September 25, you got it on September 21, if
Friday.
I'm correct.
Yeah, we have the email.
Yeah, so, no, I think we need to really just show people the cards you
Yeah.
got dealt that
Yeah.
you're sharing with us, because we are putting people through some gymnastics
Yes.
here in
Absolutely.
both
So, no
towns.
question.
And we didn't intend to, but we have to go with what we know at the time and take care of this K-12 mission that is ours to care for.
Absolutely.
So apologies all around, I think, is where we start, but we don't see what could have been avoided, is the way I sense it right now.
So to paraphrase something that Lori said last night was, who would have thought that getting a much lower bid and finding money in the budget would be such a problem? You would have me hanging my head like this.
Yes.
It should be good news.
It should be good news. It is good news. We just, I think you're right, we have to be so thoughtful.
We just be clear on
Because we could never have predicted we'd be having this
Right.
conversation.
So,
And we have to make the best decision now based on the information that we
That's
have. And we just have to share that.
So I would say going forward, we gotta slow down. I just worry about what we try to bring forward in the spring. You know, the timing of it and communication, there just has not been enough time to do it right.
so just order of events.
But
For these articles, do we need to vote whether to move them or not?
Well, you voted already to move them, so you're gonna need to vote.
So
not to move them.
I'd like to do the business of whether we're going to move them or not, and then take up how we communicate and, you know, what we do about that if we choose not to.
so there's some sort of communicating with the town moderators.
Correct, like
the
who's going to do
mechanics,
what.
but
and
then there's
how's it
the,
gonna
what I'll call the PR
Right.
and the meetings, yeah.
Yeah.
We should
So
probably-
are we gonna vote
To
later?
your point, let's decide.
So I don't know, do we want to, it's not on the agenda as a vote, but clearly it needs to happen tonight because.
Because literally we found out Friday,
Right.
so
Yeah, so
it's
this
not
is-
on the agenda.
The special town meeting is Monday,
Yeah.
so there's no other option but to vote tonight.
The
If
only,
we do it now.
we have an item to vote to award the feasibility study. Is that any kind of, because, right, it was contingent upon
Funding,
funding,
but
but it
not
doesn't matter.
specific to the source.
So we should still feel comfortable awarding that tonight. Okay.
Yeah, and we could change the way the motion's written.
We'll have to change the motion. It's not contingent, were we to pull the articles,
It's not contingent.
it's not contingent, yeah.
Right, but that's
On
not an
warrant
issue at all.
articles,
Okay.
That's not an issue.
Okay, so
Do we,
we vote now or later?
well,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think because we need to talk about how we will get the word out, we probably, it's not our normal procedure, but,
Right.
because we've got other business to deal with, but it might be best to vote
clarify
And
it.
then have that discussion and then move on to the,
Vote and then talk about
to
next
the,
steps.
to the policies. So I would
Yep.
make a motion
Okay.
that the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee vote not to move warrant articles 6 and 7 on the Concord warrant and 1 and 2 on the Carlisle warrant at the special town meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Okay.
And we'll vote on the.
Well done, and
award
thank you for all that
later.
information and digging over the past couple of days.
Yeah.
That's a big change we've just made, but I feel like it's.
While you're
Yay.
listening, we'll vote on
Oh, good. Oh my gosh, we got a
Thanks, guys.
All right, I'll stop hanging my head in angst. It's been very stressful the last couple of days.
Thank you for helping us figure that out.
Yeah.
It's a big question, and I'm glad we had such a good discussion here about it, but that's.
So
So I
we'll
think-
vote on the feasibility study
We can do that
contract.
where we were originally. were gonna do.
Exactly, on the action item. So, but Joanna, you had mentioned communication.
Well, we were just talking about, was that what you were going to bring up?
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
we probably should have the forum, continue to have the forum hanging out there that we have planned. So if people want to come get a better understanding of this, that they
Exactly.
can.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then we need to
So
notify the moderator first thing in the morning.
I think it's a little bait and switch for these forums. I think we ought to be.
I think we
Whatever
better
we told the first
articulate maybe
time,
what they are.
We ought
Yeah.
to say we're not moving them, but we're still happy to educate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
By whatever means we can do before, because they're this week.
Right, but,
Where we
but
can
like
say
for
much.
Carlisle, we put it out this morning. But just however we told people originally, let's
Go back to
retell.
Oh, that's what I
Because
Can-
it was
can
town meeting
someone-
related, we've been very vague on telling people why the meetings are, for the most part, which is part
Right.
of our communication challenge.
Right.
When I put the communication out, I'm very sensitive to that.
Right.
So clarity now is easy, I think, because we can just tell people we're offering information on campus projects.
Right.
so I would think that someone, and don't take this as a volunteer, someone should write up a explanation that we can
That's what I
share.
was gonna say too. And then.
Whoever it is, the town moderators, select board, PTG presidents, FinCom.
And the narrative, the same
The
narrative.
narrative,
yeah,
Summary
that
goes to every place we can think
Same
of.
way, same one, yeah.
Yes.
Are you comfortable handing that off to, I mean, I'd be happy to stay after the meeting, get that language together.
I think it needs to go out tonight or first thing.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying is stay at night and do it.
Yeah, no, I'll stick
With
with it.
Jared
Yeah.
and or Lori.
Do we, like, you went out for the PTGs, like, do we know how to resend to everybody that got it the first time?
I think that we can do a pretty good job.
Well,
Well,
we,
I know
we'll
what
start
I-
with the list that's no longer to be in our rules.
Yeah, that's
That'd be good.
You made that list.
See, it's a good thing we did that, Bob.
Comes in handy.
I mean, we start there and.
Yep.
Well, and I know I
And send it to the
reached
town.
to the school in Carlisle and City in the Woods.
So you're gonna go.
I'll go
do
back
that
and do
one?
all those again.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do whatever we did before as our best to go
Yeah,
wide
yeah.
and far right.
I
And
mean, clearly
And
the
let's-
town officials are your starting point.
Right,
No.
and I was just gonna say, in
We'll
terms
get
of
word
the
on the
town,
rest.
we haven't gotten good about, sending all of our things through the town email updates or anything, but because this is special town meeting, if we reach out to the town information officer and ask,
Send it out.
yeah, could this be, in one of those, the email blasts that they do with all the updates and news things,
Sarah, can you
a blast saying, the
I
school
think you guys
committee,
can do a blast.
school committee has decided not to move Articles 6
I'll-
and 7, this is why.
I will check with the town information
That's
officer
great,
tomorrow.
Okay,
You can
good.
do
On
that
this,
very
after
Yeah.
the statement
Get it
is
written.
made.
Right, so once we have a statement, we can
Yeah,
send it out,
exactly.
and we obviously send it to the journal, mosquitoes here,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we just get it out as quickly as we can.
And I think include what's left, just the two forums, that they'll be, school committee members will be available for discussion and information, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Exactly.
Well, and with the journal being Thursday, if we get this to
Too late.
Rob.
Too late.
Tuesday at noon.
Yeah.
It can be in there for the people who,
And it will go
Yeah, I
out
think it should
on
be-
their.
They might put it on the
online
We get
website.
it, yeah, exactly, if we get it to him
I'll send it
tonight,
to Rob
it's
to-
relevant,
yeah.
hopefully he can get something
Sure you will.
published before Monday.
We'll do something.
Okay, at least online.
Yeah.
We're hoping this is big enough for the mosquito to flash.
Sarah, who's at the board?
Already done.
And then the glow will probably pick up.
Who's at the board of selectmen tonight, do you know?
I think Bessie was gonna text them when I texted her, what you did 5 minutes ago.
And did she text you back?
She said, what?
Because
I haven't heard.
That's what we said.
Yeah, she was at the budget meeting last night.
Okay, are we done on this?
Yeah, and you,
Well,
you guys are gonna stay.
We're gonna do
You also just volunteered to work with Lori on this. You haven't asked Lori to
This corner else.
She's been like,
Well, you guys can go.
So we've got these 2 information sessions tomorrow and Thursday.
Wednesday, Thursday. Yes, tomorrow.
Tomorrow's Wednesday.
I know, I'm all.
No, I get it, I'm like, yeah, tomorrow, okay.
Right.
So we're still going to have them,
Yeah.
but it takes, I'm trying to give Lori and Jared or whoever
break.
else.
Well, you're not gonna shoot the answer.
I don't think.
I had already asked for relief because I had 3 nights out, so tomorrow night I wasn't able to
Okay, so
come.
we're-
I'm triple booked
I think
Thursday,
let's make
so-
sure we got 2 committee members at each,
Okay.
or something like that.
I'll be at Carlisle tomorrow. Is anybody
Yeah.
else there?
I can be there
I-
if necessary.
yeah,
You're gonna be
I'm
there?
We do need your feedback. Gail is planning on sending an engineer to the forums. Do you think that's necessary?
No.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Good
We
point.
would
Thank
just-
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
All right, so we have some
Thursday
coverage.
one in the morning?
Well, Thursday's an evening one too.
I can probably do
Thursday.
that.
I've got back
We
to
don't
school
already have a
Thursday.
I would hope to go back to school.
What time's the Thursday
No,
one?
you
No, I
should be
can
able
do
to go
Thursday.
too.
I'll do
You can-
Thursday
yeah,
one.
good.
What time is it?
6:30.
6:30 in the Learning Commons.
Yeah.
And we should include that in our notice
Sure.
that goes out anyway. And 6:30 in Carlisle. Carlisle's covered by Mary and,
Christine and
Christine.
okay.
I'll check if they want me.
Meeting man.
So, well, you'll send that statement to all of us, or can you do that?
Well, yeah, we'll
No,
send it
tonight,
out
though.
and probably try to
we'll-
send it to everybody.
No, just because we want the same,
Originally
exact.
sent
Yeah,
it
we'll
to.
make sure everybody
And
has the
then-
same thing.
Should we establish who's sending what to where, like
Letterhead or not?
all the PTG newsletters and that kind of stuff?
Well, we can-
Yeah, I can do those if you want. If you send me the blurb, I'm happy to
stick
submit it to
around
all
for
the.
5 minutes and maybe
let's do
take
that.
Why don't
List
let's make a
stuff.
list. I'll start doing that while we speak.
Yeah.
I'll double multitask.
All right.
Start with
You
the
do that,
Heather's
Mary.
list in the
Yeah, we
polls
have a
that's been
list
deleted.
started.
Yep. All right, let's go. Let's start with our.
Okay,
Let's keep
onward.
Okay,
Policies.
I thought this was just going to be about coffee.
policies are next.
Does anybody else need a
Break.
break?
Come on, it's policies.
Mary's been waiting
so
since.
hard.
So excited. Don't make her wait.
Please go stretch.
It's the first reading.
You go, we'll go.
It's before you put all the work in.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Or, yeah?
Sure. We're ready unless we
Yes.
want a bio break. We can do it after.
DK.
No, you can go.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Moving on, because I have to stay late.
I
The policy subcommittee met a few weeks ago, and we had a couple policies from the spring that we revisited, and those of you who were there, or Mary should speak up at any point. These are first readings, so you're welcome to give us feedback. I'm going to just go one at a time and talk on pieces of the thoughts behind each. So IJNDD, our previous policy was titled Policy on Facebook and Social Networking Websites. So that right there indicates the dated orientation. So we really spent most of our time looking at the MASC version of their updated policy language, which fleshes it out more. It doesn't name specific platforms, which is better in 2018, but it does outline various ways the technology can be used, and pretty clearly, especially for the teaching staff, gives them guidelines on appropriate use and a use that we either prohibit or would have great concern about. So I think I certainly feel like this is a policy I can now share with the staff and provide them a lot more guidance and feedback.
And we also had the benefit of the MASC policy expert.
Yeah,
with
Dorothy
us
Press
at the most
was
recent
with us.
meeting.
So that's the first one, the policy on social media. You can ask me more specific questions for the sake of time and not go too in depth. I am B, teaching about controversial issues and controversial speakers. This had bits of change. There's been additions to it in the MASC policy. It's an interesting time to be looking at this policy, I would say. The world has shifted in terms of both what our students might bring to the conversation, but the bigger climate that we're in does regularly become something we have to be very sensitive to in the classroom. So I think this is a very strong set of talking points and guidelines for teachers on how to manage some of these topics. Probably the biggest one that I was looking for, which is here, is a reminder that you are politically neutral with kids. And then I think it also gives us a little more guideline. The walkout fit perfectly with some of what's here for the student-initiated forums, and so it's an interesting new lens to have in reading some of these languages.
And Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, forgive me. Student-initiated forums was one of the more significant additions to this one.
Correct, yes, and again, the walkout and any other similar activities, we have some guideline now, and we can refer, this part I love, we can refer kids to the policy and say, here's the way to approach the thing that you're considering. So that's INB. JA, student policies goals. We read this one a few times over. There's no corresponding MASC policy. We're recommending deleting that. It's very generic and without a directed purpose.
Cool.
JB, equal educational opportunities. This has more language. The MASC policy has added, every time the laws are reflective of different subgroups, we have to be sure they maintain that in the, we need to make sure we maintain that in the policy. So there's small tweaks to that. Otherwise, it's essentially the same as the prior policy was. JC, school attendance areas. We had quite a bit of conversation about anything relating to residency and how, and first entrance to school, and then second of all, determination of where you go. So we are suggesting the MASC policy, only paralleling the title to the one we previously had, so that it's called school attendance areas. It talks on some of the considerations that need to be in play, especially for the 3 Concord elementary schools where residency matters. The piece we've sort of not as deeply delved into yet, and we're going to loop back to it, is the way in which we determine residency, which was in the previous policy. Mary actually shared Carlisle's work on that, and there's some really good model there to start the conversation with. This is an outdated list that doesn't necessarily belong in this policy per se. So we've got more work to do on that, but we've honed into what the policy needs to be. It was almost serving too many purposes before, and now it's really honed in on school attendance area and how you get assigned to a school. We will deal with the residency piece in further conversations.
Can I ask a question about this?
Yes.
It's not specifically about this, but as I was reading these, is there anything in the policy manual that describes how we would have to kick off a redistricting if we got to that point? Or is that a decision
So there's a
comes from
line,
you to us? And
yeah, there's a line here that says from time to time, overcrowding might be part of the discussion. It doesn't get into specifics. It becomes a discussion here at that point.
so it's not a policy, it's a process.
It's
Just,
very much a
just
process. Right, which you're segueing me nicely into the next one.
No.
I have a question.
Mosquito just published.
Oh, very good.
All right.
I just have a
Win.
question.
I gotta get that social media stuff.
Oh, wow.
Second
That's
to,
impressive. Sorry.
second to the last article, the last line
In which one are you in?
in
School attendance?
yeah, JC-B.
Attendance.
The election development.
That's the muse. Which one are you, where are you?
Yeah, okay, no, that's what it
Oh,
sounds like.
you're on the next one,
JCB,
attendance
attendance.
Oh,
districts.
you've gone to the next.
And that's to
Sorry.
take out anyway, Bob.
So the
We're
attendance,
getting rid of that.
yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
we're actually,
But I was just,
because this is gonna be fluid, and to both of your points, this isn't actually something we're gonna be able to keep up with. Not that we've changed this in a while, but you don't want it in a policy probably per se. So right now, the way we publish it,
It's not a policy.
if you go on the webpage, you can see
Right.
which streets are assigned to which
That would
school.
Yeah.
That would never change without all of you being part of it, so we are suggesting deleting this.
That makes sense.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Too brand new.
JCA, assignment of students to schools. We made a couple of minor tweaks based on the MASC language. We did, you'll see probably the most substantive change, two changes. Number 3, we honed right in on the elementary schools because there's no other option for changing schools. And then the recommendation of the subcommittee was to give me rights to grant specific permission for the transportation piece there, rather than coming all the way up to the school committee level. All right.
Yeah.
And then JEB is kindergarten and grade 1 entrance policy. We had a pretty healthy discussion on this, just knowing some of how this one plays out in reality. So we are recommending that if you look at what's there, most of that's the MASC language, not completely paralleled with our previous, so you want to take a look at that. But we've clarified that children will be 5 by August 31st, so there's an actual date there. And then the other line that we had a lot of discussion about, admission of children whose birthday fall at the first day of school will be solely at the school's discretion. We had eliminated that for now because if you go to the next line, initial admission of children to first grade will involve a consideration of both chronological age and readiness. So we are regularly asked if there's a September birthday, if we can move that. The principals are trained to bounce those to me. This kind of limits that local level of decision making so that there's, we typically do not grant that. I'll just say right out loud, it's very challenging to be younger than the other kids, and we typically don't. So, questions? And keep digesting for the next month.
That's great. Thank you for the summary. It's so helpful to have your summary of changes as you go through it. It's great.
So ready to move on to old business, Peg Studio user agreement. So,
Do you want me to open this up?
Please, yeah.
Okay. It's got some definite discussion to be had. Since we last talked about this, I have continued to work with several folks. What you have in front of you is an outcome of efforts from legal counsel, communication with Chris Whalen in his office at Concord Town Hall. Through Chris, communication with Carlisle Town Hall and Tim Goddard and one of the Board of Selectmen. And so this is where we're at. There's still feedback I know from some of you. So usually once it's posted on the agenda, I say bring the feedback to the meeting so we don't have all these different versions floating. So I know Court's got some things to mention. We're happy to entertain other things. Chris and I have talked on it is October 1st. They formally take over. We're hoping tonight we might be ready. If we're not, we're all in a verbal agreement to keep going the way we are until everybody's comfortable. So I think I'd open it up to Court and then anyone else who has feedback.
So I'd start by simply echoing what Carlin said, that there's a sentiment that we should take a look at number 8. One might interpret this as something that could place the studio in some jeopardy, and I don't think that was the intent. So we could look at that. I've taken the liberty to make a few handwritten notes here because I couldn't edit a PDF doc, of course. And just take a look at a couple of ideas that I'd like to suggest to you. On item 3, community access, I believe that the first section, the first 2 lines is factually incorrect in consideration of the PEG funding which was provided by the towns of Concord and Carlisle in 2015 to the district in order to create the studio space inside CCHS. Not true. The building project was borrowed money by the 2 towns, and it was supplemented by a special select board appropriation in Concord of $100,000 to represent the fact that SBAB money would not be coming in, or would be withheld, if you will, for the square footage relating to A, the PEG Access Studio, and B, the Community Education Office, neither of which are eligible for SBAB support. So that, I think, inspired the select board at that time to bring an additional $100,000 to the building project fund. So we might consider starting simply with the end of line 2, the district will allow the town access, because that's the intent here.
So I think, was
Please.
this not, I think this was to recognize Carlisle's contribution, and I appreciate that
And that's important too. I want to
it's
address
wrong,
that.
the way it's stated,
Yeah.
but I think it sounds like that's how I read the intent.
Right.
That both towns
Yes,
contributed.
correct. And so let me just pause and say, it now appears that the town of Concord will be the fiscal agent to make all of this happen, and Carlisle will put into effect an understanding with Concord to send some or all of its PEG monies to Concord, create some kind of continued relationship, not unlike what's happening now, but with not an independent corporation, CCTV, taking those 2 PEG funds, one Carlisle, one Concord, but rather Concord being that fiscal agent and management agent.
So,
But I want to address that because I think there are some sentiments that I've heard from folks in Carlisle that say it is not clear enough that Carlisle intends to have a continuing role in PEG access, and it wouldn't be really realistic financially, or perhaps even otherwise, but certainly financially, to try to go it alone. Coupling their funds with Concord funds makes a lot of sense, especially when we have a regional high school as the fiscal basis for all of this, and kids from both towns are using it, and adults are too. So by way of simply starting this conversation, I thought we could introduce words that are intent words, perhaps, to make it very clear that this is a Carlisle enterprise as well, albeit through a new mechanism like an intermunicipal agreement that hasn't been struck yet by the town manager and the town administrator of the 2 towns, but perhaps something like access to and use by the town of Carlisle, let's make it explicit, and its residents will be insured through an expected intermunicipal agreement.
that's good.
Or something like that. We can discuss all this later. Just let me lead you through my couple of ideas. I didn't understand the footnote at the bottom of
that's a leftover
item
from-
4, so that would
Yeah,
get
that just
dropped.
gets dropped.
And I think it's our job to beat the drum for this as an educational resource, to make it clear that we very much want it used. We want to take advantage of this in lots of creative ways. So perhaps a statement of sentiment on our part. The district believes that the studio and equipment is a valuable educational resource for students, i.e. pay attention, use it, it's a resource there. The item 7, page 2, bottom, we read reference to an agreement in perpetuity a couple of weeks ago and thought that didn't help anybody. And some of us are puzzled by amendments, revisions, or substantive changes to the agreement may be reviewed and proposed, quote, as part of the townwide annual budgetary process, unquote. I scratch my head because I see the budgetary process as a 12-month endeavor. And so we might be better served by the third sentence reading, amendments, revisions, or substantive changes to the agreement may be reviewed and proposed by the district or the town. Landlord and fiscal agent managing this thing, perhaps. And then finally, another note on item 8, not exactly the same as Carlin Reed's. I didn't understand subsequent operations of the town, how we wanted to introduce vague things about town activity in the school under a specific studio agreement. So were there to be some relocation language, I think it'd be referencing the studio space, not subsequent operations of the town. I just didn't know quite what that meant. Didn't want to introduce things that require interpretation that we didn't have lots of agreement on. So a few ideas there for your consideration.
And I would go back to, I'm very leery of the lack of Carlisle mentioned in this. I mean, Court, you mentioned in number 3, community access, that you would alter that, to alter the first sentence to your sentence. But when it says allow the town, and I know the town is the agent that's going to oversee this, but I think there's some loss here when we say the town can use it and we don't say that Carlisle residents can use it. So you may have reached the same point, Court, with your comment. And then Article 5, again, it says groups not affiliated with the town of Concord. So there are going to be groups that are affiliated with Carlisle that aren't affiliated with Concord. So I think Carlisle needs to be brought in there as well.
Help me understand though, this is the agreement between the district and the town of Concord. Per Court's recommendations, he's suggesting that the access and use by the town of Carlisle will be addressed through another agreement. So by that definition, would we then not need to specify Carlisle use in here?
Maybe.
Because this agreement is for Concord and that one would be.
But I wouldn't want to sign this without knowing, you're saying.
Without knowing that
like
that happens.
Promise of that community use agreement took forever to work through.
Yeah, this is the only legal document we've got so far.
Yeah.
No way.
You see,
How do
yeah,
we resolve, I mean,
exactly.
editing by committee is going to be really hard.
Well, perhaps what we could do is, I hadn't thought of this before, maybe a poor idea. Perhaps we could ask for the intermunicipal agreement before this gets signed. Now, we do, some might say, have an October 1 deadline, but we've been operating without a lease agreement for how many years? Decades. Because we've had CCTV there, we've had Neshoba cable there.
6 months then.
No, I think we should take this very seriously and make sure that Carlisle is well protected here, because it has contributed its share to this from day one, and it is a mutual enterprise. We all know that. We simply want people in Carlisle to be comfortable that that is so. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I looked at this and if this was the agreement and a Carlisle resident knocked on the door and said, I'd like to use the equipment, this agreement could say, well, no, you're not on here. You have to be affiliated with Concord.
I think, to Mary's point, the community use agreement that we worked on took forever. I mean, not forever, it took a really long time. And it was 2 or 3 committee members that worked and liaison between the town and towns and the district, because I mean, almost exactly what Christine's bringing up, but, you know, you got it is a legal document. I would, and I feel like it needs that microscope or, you know, magnifying glass on it to really, and it's hard to do as a committee of 7.
Right.
We've had attorneys who have been involved in this.
Oh, yeah.
And my guess is that this is written this way because the agreement between the district and the PEG access is going to be with Concord. And the agreement that Carlisle and Concord have worked out relative to PEG access is between them.
Right.
And that the town is going to manage this. So from a legal standpoint, you can't just insert Carlisle or an S on the back of town, where that, you know, that changes the entire document and probably, you know, would require a change to the way Concord and Carlisle have decided to move forward on this. So I think us trying to change this document to on that matter, without some agreement between Carlisle and Concord, and I don't think that's likely to happen. It seems like the smoother way to do this is the way it's been put out. So maybe the answer is just you guys have to hash out that community use agreement before we sign this thing.
Yeah. So I guess I'll argue a little bit, like, because I feel differently that the agreements between the town of Concord and us, right? And we represent the students of Concord and Carlisle. So it's a little fuzzy to me that, you know, maybe it does all belong.
But there's allowance in here for students.
Yeah, but I don't.
Which would be
I don't want to just
regional
assume
students.
that we need a separate agreement. Like that's what I would want, like, legal advice on.
Yeah.
Is this the place to do it, or should we have to agree?
And I just wonder here, I mean, we're the leaseor and they're the leasee. And what the leasee decides to do from a legal standpoint is to how they set up PEG access. It has nothing to do with us. You know, so I think we have to be careful about imposing ourselves on an agreement that's not ours.
Yeah, good enough, fair enough.
I mean, we are really just, you know, who's the agent? And we'll
But we
put the
do
right
have-
agent in here.
But we
You
do
guys
have
work out
strong
what your
sentiment
agreement is.
language in here
Right.
that says we expect this to be a all-student and two-town enterprise. That's our expectation, which means we have some leverage, but without putting legal words in there that can't be defended.
So I think, you know, to protect the concerns voiced by our 2 Carlisle members, which I think are valid, and to the point, there's no reason we have to sign this on October 1st. Let's put their feet to the fire.
Yeah, I
Have them
think we
get the
need some
finger.
help here with process because Chris has had extensive conversations in Carlisle and not had that feedback from those panels. So I'm a little not, I hear your intent and I know Chris's intent is to do exactly everything you want. So I don't really think that's the,
Yeah,
I'm
not-
struggling with
just
if
a bit.
Carlisle wants to use the studio and Concord says, no, that's not our place to get in that, I
Right.
don't think. So I think there's definitely some things to say here that we all expect Carlisle to have access, but we're not the governing body there. I'm not in a place to call Chris and say, you gotta let Carlisle in, I can't believe you just did that. I have no authority, neither do you, frankly. So I think I so know why you want it here, and that everything you've said is the intention we've heard from every direction. What goes here
So-
appropriately is still my
So
stuck
it comes back
question.
to some, like, community use agreement
Yeah.
between the 2 towns. Well,
Yeah.
Correct.
So what would the process
I'm
be?
just, like, because CCFA was different.
I assume they're working on a community use agreement, or is
Yes,
this a
they are,
handshake?
and they
kind of
have a
thing?
de
Oh, I
facto
thought
agreement
you were waving.
that's in force right now.
For the PEG funding, or
Uh, The,
Space.
for the space, for the use of the space, there's to be no change in current practices. We have one CCTV Inc. employee at the high school today and 2 Town of Concord employees at the high school today. So the transition has already occurred. I think what Lori's trying to say is, or perhaps we're all wrestling with is, the town of Concord has agreed to be the managing agent of this, so we have no choice but to talk to them. Carlisle has agreed to talk to Concord about affecting a good relationship that is similar to the one that's worked in the past, hopefully even better.
Yep.
Because better is really the operative word here. We
Yes.
want some positive changes for everybody involved.
Yeah.
So I think we have to take it on faith that that's going to happen, because I don't think Carlisle town officials would have sat by and let this occur if they didn't have great comfort in the idea that they were going to have a relationship through the town manager with this operation that's going to work for Carlisle. I think we would have heard.
And don't they also have control of the monies?
They control their money and choose to put them on the table next to Concord's money and make a joint effort happen and get some of the efficiencies that can occur because of the commingling of those monies under the eyes of both.
It's not like they don't have leverage.
It's got to be two different agreements, because CCTV solved the problem by saying Concord and Carlisle will both be represented by a nonprofit corporation.
Right.
Well, that's gone now,
yeah.
so we have no choice but to hold somebody accountable. We have to hold somebody accountable. And Concord has chosen to be the accountable, and Carlisle has assented to that with black and white agreements yet to get generated. But I think it's just the nature of how they're working together, and we have to trust that it's going to happen. I'm comfortable it is going to happen. I also am comfortable with adding Carlisle language here, but only insofar as what we can do legally, because as Wally said, we can't dictate about their relationship. All we can talk about is our expectation.
So does that get us back to pretty much what your suggestion was here, that if we can't dictate that relationship, we are the landlord here, we put in something saying we expect this to happen, we expect an agreement to be reached between Concord and Carlisle. But is that as far as we can go?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what this sentence you've written.
Right, so that's what I'm saying, it kind of brings us back to Court's suggestion, actually.
Have
And
you
if
talked
you-
to anybody? Like,
I only talked to Melissa.
I just don't know how, and I know you've had mixed response, like, I don't know how engaged Carlisle officials are.
I'm
In
going
your
to,
sense, I don't know.
what I would offer up, because I talked to a few people, Melissa included, about this, is that we have had a good deal of participation in these conversations from Carlisle Select Board representatives. Barry Kissinger currently, Doug Stevens in the past, others in the past, very involved, effective relationships. I wouldn't say that the conversations between the two town administrators have been quite as effective, given the lack of evidence, no agreement yet. So
they did meet on this document.
Good, okay.
And there was a member of the Board of Selectmen with them.
Excellent,
I
okay.
Was it
can't.
Gary? Do you know?
No,
Nathan?
Gabriel.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe, and I'm the
No,
messenger, I don't have much firsthand other than what has been reported to me. So there was a meeting, so.
Okay. So
The question,
how do we
I
get
think,
to,
Eric, might be, do we move ahead with something like this, or do we send this back to, for example, the town manager and the town administrator specifically?
Well, I'm happy to
might
take
be
it to
going?
Tim.
Tim's seen it multiple times, I think he needs to hear your concerns as well.
That's what I'm saying. If I take it to Tim.
and the selectmen, we can talk offline. about
Okay.
how to-
Yep, I
Mary
think
Ann.
that's probably
Because
next.
I think we're crazy to try to vote on this tonight.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
nitpicks,
no.
and let's understand and push whatever communication has to be pushed to.
Good.
And
Can I ask a quick, I was.
Well, I can't recognize you, the Carlisle chairwoman.
There you go, you're correct about that.
I was right.
I was just gonna, actually, that's exactly, the question I was gonna ask was related to Clause 8. We had a comment about it, and then Court, you echoed it as well, and I'm looking at it thinking, I don't have much background on this, even having been an observer to the board a little bit, but is there some explanation of kind of where this comes from and the point, and if there would be a different way to word it that would make sense or not? I would love just kind of more background on this comment and your thoughts
Well,
on it.
I guess I would start with the educational mission is inviolate. And
Right.
that's, I think, what's behind this.
I mean, I see 25 years and I think this needs to be in here.
Exactly.
And it needs to be at our, I think it needs to be at our sole discretion. Now, we could put some safeguards in there that it's substantially similar space or something like that, to be agreed upon between the town and the district. But when the day is done, we need,
I think even
we
that
might need to be,
might not
we might
know
need to have
about-
to say, we need space. And you're gonna have to relocate.
And we need that space.
Yeah.
But wasn't that space paid for Carlisle and Concord money? Not in the,
That doesn't change our governance
It was
responsibility.
paid by the district, and there was some money paid by Concord to outfit the
Additional,
interior
yeah.
of the space.
okay.
And if worst case, they would want our money back, and if we were jammed up that bad for space, we'd probably be happy to give it to them. But I think, we need to maintain our ability to use that building as we see fit.
Colin?
Thank you. Carlin Reed, 83 Woodson. Just briefly, yes, Dr. Hunter is correct. That discussion between the two town administrator and the town manager took place last Wednesday. I don't know the results of that conversation, but this particular issue was about the coordination was the topic. And I do recall back in January of this year, there was a draft intermunicipal agreement circulated between the town of Carlisle and the town of Concord. So they have a draft document from which to work. They're not just coming straight out of square one. They have something to base it on. So with a little bit of encouragement by our school committee members in Carlisle as well as Concord, I think you can get the deal done.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, anything further on this? Strategic plan is next.
Cord, I appreciate all your
I'm
efforts
sorry.
on this.
Yes.
Are we, because everybody had little comments, like how, is somebody gonna own, you have edits to it, Court, like how do we get to the next version of this?
I've been doing that.
Yeah,
You've been.
I've been
You're
taking
those
those
names?
comments and
Okay.
bringing you new versions.
Mary, what if Court and I met with Tim instead of you and I?
I would not be hurt.
No, just know his knowledge base is phenomenal.
That's for sure.
I think it's important to bring the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, but I just, the three of us
Representative.
can't go though.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
are you all right with that?
Strategic plan?
Please.
I won't go through all this again because we've talked on it tonight and you've seen it prior. We did feel that we should bring you the best working document that we have, so that's what you have in front of you, where we fleshed out the outcomes more and now we're already editing them again, so that's probably one of the more substantial changes that has happened since school has opened. You'll see that there's underlines under the initiatives. They're actually in yellow in the color version, so that that's our strategy to highlight the action plan, so there'll be hot links right to those. 2018-19 all prioritized and clearly communicated as to what our focus areas are. So I think the question was if you had any questions, because we had hoped you'd vote this tonight just for your formal approval, and then we'll keep going with the work we're doing.
Claire, just confirm for me the, never mind, I apologize. I was curious about, actually I will ask you, I was curious about the date, because the earlier work precedes this by quite a bit. What happened such that it gets us September 17th?
So the leadership team and I have been working on the outcomes. That's the newest plus, and they're not available to you yet because they're still in working drafts. there will be hot links attached.
So nothing in this document has changed, it simply signifies that
The outcome pages.
That the outcome pages have, through highlighting, identified where you're going to go.
The outcome page is a better document. You had a much smaller list of outcomes.
Okay.
The last page.
We knew we
Okay.
needed to go back to that in June when we left off, that we had started it but not made it complete. So this is an attempt to be more complete. These are the 5-year outcomes. So I have a feeling we're going to keep revisiting this. The action plans and school improvement plans are going to have really tight goals and ways of assessing those. These are the broader based ways of assessing whether we're reaching what we had planned.
Thank you.
There's one thing I look at, I like what's highlighted. I like and all of it's important. One thing in this day and age that, for me, I would have highlighted, and we also have the safety officer issue going on, is 4.3, ensure a safe and secure environment for all students, providing training and enhanced communication.
So let me just say why we didn't. We're doing some of that work. We just are not going to write the action plan and bubble it all the way up to an initiative that is fleshed out in the broadest depth. We're actively doing a lot of that work. So it will have a different starting point when we write the action plan. We're trying to be very cognizant that if we overload, it's a lot of the conversation you just had with your goals. If we overload this first year, we might spread ourselves too thin. It doesn't mean you're not addressing some of these. So for example, I could completely see that being maybe part of my goals because I'm doing that work, but rather than having a broad-based district-wide initiative and action plan, we might not be quite to that point.
Okay. Makes sense.
Any further discussion, questions about the strategic plan?
It's exciting to see it.
It's exciting. It's great to see coming through the outcomes and everything. Just
Yeah.
Quite a project.
looking really good.
And we've been working with Molly Likas through her, she had some free slots in the action planning, and I have to say the inroad she gave to us and the template she provided and the guidance she provided is allowing us to really pull those together quickly. I was afraid we were going to get bogged in that process, and we are not getting bogged in that process. So that's really exciting. And it's all coming together.
It's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so next is school committee practices and protocols. They haven't changed, I don't think, since 2015.
Correct. We just brought these back because we had referenced them at the workshop, and they haven't been revised, and so that's up for
We said we
discussion.
would do it each year.
I had one thing.
Right, but
That's the
if-
last point, and each
but-
one says we'll look at them
But
every year.
if they're so good, maybe we don't need any changes.
Oh,
On item 7,
on which one? Which,
the first page,
The protocol?
school committee will assign observers to town boards, committees as appropriate. Our actual practice has been observers or members.
You're talking about, you're on practices, 7 you have to count.
I did
So the
1,
seventh
2,
bullet.
3, 4,
That's-
5,
yeah.
6, 7.
Full committee will
Seventh one
assign.
down.
Say that again, Wally?
Yeah.
We have, it says we'll assign observers to town boards, committees as appropriate. In our actual practice, we have had observers and or members. I was a member of 2 committees, not an observer.
Right.
So we, given the circumstance,
Right. Assign as
our
observer.
practice would be
or-
observer or member, depending
Makes
on
sense.
what is asked of the committee.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Or member.
And that should start with the word the.
Mhm. The school.
So the second to last one on the practices
Mhm.
should end with by the chair of the Concord Select Board.
Correct, Concord Select Board.
And the one above, so it would be number 6 if Wally's was number 7. The community, I would just delete the last little or a community coffee. we
Yeah.
could say, the school committee will hold public forums and/or focus groups, like, is a coffee
I think that makes
in
sense.
one of those?
That's a forum.
Yeah. I was surprised. I had typos, or not typos, but tiny edits, like that's all I had. And
Yeah, no.
I'm really pretty,
Yeah.
hypersensitive to
Yeah,
these
no, no.
things. We should add a date to it, though.
That's correct.
We also, well, the first one, school committee members will access meeting information from the webpage, which I always wait for Leona, so.
Well, so that's actually
Email.
the one I was hoping we could talk on the most. I think I think we need to come to agreement on when this is considered done, or if we're not. I think that's been some of our challenges: adding stuff late and not having
when the agenda
materials
is
ready.
considered done,
The agenda
right.
building. So I don't know what you feel you need to talk on and put to print, but I know that's been something we continue to seem to loop back to, is the timing of when the agenda's done and having materials ready.
Should be in compliance with open meeting law.
Well, that's-
We assume that.
Yeah, no, that's a necessity.
It's
That's
it's
what I
more
was talking about, isn't it?
just getting all of you on the same page.
So I'm probably the biggest whiner when it comes to this, because if our meeting's on Tuesday, I'm usually preparing over the weekend.
Yeah.
And too often, the agenda moves on a Monday or a Tuesday.
Yes.
And I just, I
Well,
can't keep up with it.
I think that's true of you,
And
Mary.
we don't know it, that.
But I think we have to make sure that our stakeholders have the same band of time that you're asking.
Because it used to be Friday afternoon, we'd get an email that said, the school committee agenda's posted. We'd be like, okay, time to go to work. And then maybe an hour later, we get, well, it's been updated. I'm like, can you tell me what's updated? Like,
I think that's the key point.
Yeah.
but we're not, I don't think we're being, no, we are being told that it's available. But the edits to some of the attachments aren't coming through, or it says, oh, here's an update.
So
you
here's,
know, huh.
yeah, this is,
Let me figure out
here's
what's
an
up.
update, it's,
Yeah, I mean, we can
it's
do a
this
better
item.
job
Yeah,
of that,
So that you're
Leona
not
was
looking
doing
through
that
the
a
whole
little better
thing.
last year, but,
Yeah.
like, or we know there's a document that needs to be attached, but it's just not ready. And, like, I don't go looking at the agenda again on Monday and Tuesday to see what's new or what's been attached. So I just find it really difficult to be prepared. It's not done Friday,
So-
where it's not very proactive. Here's what's new and different.
So doesn't the question come down to how we share the demands on you to keep working as you are, and our demand for enough time to digest so we come in prepared? You're going to have to pick some kind of default
Yeah,
deadline
and I've kind of,
ask us if we can live with it.
I don't think.
it's not
I
all me
disagree.
though, I think is
Yeah.
part of what I just need to suggest, because there's almost always, I don't want to
stuff you're
say, I
waiting
don't
for.
want to say this the wrong way. I am often waiting for materials that some
From
of
us.
you are providing.
Absolutely.
And the agenda
That's correct.
changes often are at the suggestion of a committee member. So that's where I
That's correct.
am finding myself in a hard place, because I find myself nagging some of you, and that feels not quite right. And I also think it's very hard for me to give advice to the chair when there's been a new agenda item brought up, and then we end up, whoever it is, I'll point to a few of you now, oh, should we or shouldn't we? And it's
Right.
tricky. So I just think in a more neutral discussion right now, we should give ourselves some guideline. That would be very helpful.
Yeah.
I think we should try to maintain a flexibility within the law. And what we really need to do is, when something changes, that we all get, we don't just get a notice that it's changed, but just this item changed.
So we know
And
where
then
to
we
bring
can-
it
That
down.
we can do it, that's easy. I can do it.
That's
That's
like, we've gotten changes at 4:00 the day of the meeting. Like that,
Yeah,
that's unacceptable to me. Where they just,
Well,
you know.
to me, if it's avoidable, it's unacceptable. There are going to be outstanding
Usually,
times,
yeah.
like new information, and we're not moving a warrant a few days before, especially, that
That should
things
be the
might
rare
change
exception.
last minute, but
That
it's the
should be the
exception.
That should be the
Can I
exception,
make
not the
a-
rule.
I would make a suggestion that the first thing that I think we all should commit to do, and myself included, I would say I'm probably one of the most guilty, is is get on top of things and get them to Lori and Leona earlier so that she's not having to post later. And I say that again, I'm
Definitely.
sure one of the
No,
words.
same here.
So,
Probably all guilty.
so
Yeah.
that's something I think we can all commit to doing. If we want it done
Yeah.
Thursday or Friday, when we owe a document to get on the agenda, we need to get on it and create it earlier. So I think that's one thing. If we all commit to doing that, to me, it's very helpful for Leona to send it out by Friday. And at the same time, if there's something missing, I'm okay with, okay, here's the agenda, it has 90% of the attachments, and especially if there's a heads up. If we know that one thing is missing or two things are missing, maybe it's, here's the agenda on Friday, these 2 documents will be posted by Monday, and then you know in advance, okay, I've got 80% of my documents, and 2 are gonna be added, whatever it may be. And then when the update comes, completely agree, this is what's updated. It has to say what's new, or we're all digging, trying to figure out what's new.
So I think we should commit to having documents to Leona 3 days before she needs to post it.
Thursday.
Does she
That's
post
one
it
day.
Friday? That's one
Supposed to
day.
Friday.
Legally, it's all
3
Friday.
days before she posts it? That would
That's
be-
sometimes unrealistic because we don't
That's-
have the
yeah.
information all together yet.
No, I really
Well,
think we need to be
yeah.
careful about creating problems for ourselves that we don't have.
Right.
I mean,
But I think
first
we
of
do
all,
have
a
a
lot of those
problem.
you're now talking about having stuff together a week before, because you have to post the agenda by Friday. Now, you don't legally have to, the links we provide on
Right.
the agenda are not required by law.
Correct.
Those are there because we've chosen not to have a, ream of paper hanging out on the
Right,
thing out there
right.
every day. And it's easier to gather that stuff. And it also gives us the opportunity to get things on an updated basis more quickly, because it used to come by Pony Express.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we should be limiting our ability to make changes, but I do think we need to be, I think it's valuable to commit to have things in on time. But I think it should be the exception, not the norm, that we change things on a Monday
Yeah.
or Tuesday for a Tuesday meeting. And we try not to do those things, but, that we absolutely identify what's changed. I know that's frustrating to me, and I oftentimes read Monday or Tuesday. But it's frustrating that, okay, no, what changed, and I don't really know.
Yeah, we can,
So
that we can.
Lori's getting emails from me on Saturday and Sunday to say, oh, I opened it up and this is missing or that's wrong, or like, and so I get all prepared and then I go, oh, darn, I gotta reread this document on Monday because it's a new version. So I'm asking everybody to try to get things done on time. It's the exception that we add something to the agenda or that a document changes. When the agenda changes, we know what it is, to your point. If the documents aren't attached, we're told this is gonna come on Monday, that just
Yeah.
clear communication, that's.
Communication?
Yeah.
Well, because I don't know how you guys prepare on Monday or Tuesday.
Believe me, I
you know.
agree with you completely.
I often have, and it's shifts of left. My weekends are
For the sake
sucked
of
up
it,
in
it's the same issue.
games. My Monday and Tuesday are
A
away.
little wiggle room. Okay.
Wiggle,
Does
just
that
don't
help?
wiggle all the
So-
time.
Yeah.
So Lori will be better.
And yes,
It's all
I think that's
on
a
Lori.
You know,
We need to get stuff to
as much as
her
the problem
faster.
is too, and my commitment for this year was that I wouldn't be doing that, and it felt really good that it was essentially done on Friday this week, and that was great, and then
It's the
you found an
essential
error in
part.
it, thanks to Mary's reading on Saturday, so it,
Did anyone? So nobody read it before the weekend?
What? I
Because
didn't this
the links
weekend.
were wrong.
yeah, we had a.
No, I did see it like 3 or 4 hours after you.
Was that the one?
So I beat you by 3 hours.
You did, you did. I admit
No,
it.
it's, okay.
So
I did not read
that's-
it
so
before the
it's-
weekend.
Thank you, that
It's
alone
also,
is
it's
helpful.
credibility with the community,
Yeah, no,
because they
absolutely.
want to see stuff, they want to comment on it,
Right.
Yeah,
right?
Yep,
absolutely.
absolutely.
So we all have some work to do.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think it just makes it better for everybody,
Yeah.
that's the goal.
That's good, because I was looking for stuff to do this week.
Okay, anything else on this agenda item?
I got
Ready,
protocols.
finally.
Yeah, we gotta go
Okay.
to protocol.
Oh, I'm asking you. Okay.
The date,
Oh, is that first?
There is a date up there, but.
Yeah, change it.
let's-
Yeah, change it.
I circled number 3.
Mhm.
Hence our recent discussion.
Yeah. Number 5, I thought, just add the word there. School committee members will channel their requests. I misread this the first time through, like, somebody asked for something, we were gonna send them to the superintendent. But this is, if we are looking for specific information.
Good point. Yeah.
We're there.
Yeah.
Number 6 is avoiding surprises. That's a little bit what I was just talking about. Number 12, like if these are, well, for 2 separate committees, then it should be singular. But if, are we using the same protocols for both committees?
We did have them as, they're listed at the top as
Yeah,
well.
listed
Yeah,
as
we
joint.
Yeah, yeah.
So then, we're using the singular school committee throughout, except for that, number 12.
So make them plural if we're gonna do it.
Well, if it's how you want to read it, right?
Or
If it applies to
If
both,
it's
but
for both, it
it's
should be
applied to a
plural.
specific.
Yeah, good point.
And then I had suggested that, is there any sense in trying to maintain a schedule for the meetings? I know we've talked about this once before, like, you know, some town boards will say, we're gonna talk, they schedule each item at a time for it.
We
And try
talked
to
about
manage
that.
it.
Yeah, because I think Carlisle does that, right?
No, not the school
Board of
committee, the
Selectmen.
No, the Board of
selectmen.
Selectmen.
Yeah, Board of Selectmen, because I
Well, it
watched
helps
the
people
thing.
that wanna
Yeah, I
come
know.
in,
It
that's
does.
a different.
And it's
thing.
approximate and, you know, at times.
I've always thought we should try. I would also say a night like tonight is the perfect
Yeah,
example
that's
how it
exactly- yeah,
how
sure.
it
No,
goes totally
it's-
off.
it's-
right?
But then I would,
But-
like, this thing that says we expect to end by 9:30 is ridiculous to me.
No,
We make absolutely
time is
no
it?
plans.
9:34.
4 minutes later.
9:34.
No, but there's no effort to end at 9:30. So,
Well,
Oh, I disagree.
Well, we also only have one
notice
meeting a
was
month,
that?
so I think we've got to give ourselves the ability to.
no, just so,
I hear you, Mary, but I think we are mindful of the time. You know?
I think so.
I'm aware that probably the two of you get in the office before some of us tomorrow morning, and you have a longer drive.
Not only in the office,
But Mary, to your point, I think we have to be maybe more mindful of this and ask the chairs to time check us and be bolder about shutting us down if we're talking about extraneous stuff.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
Good job, Bob.
Kligoff.
All right, so I'll take on editing these.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
I gotta find a document. I only have this PDF, I gotta search to see if I have it.
Just email me, I'll send them to you.
I'll offer up as a new
Yeah.
member. I was very pleased with these. I thought these were really thoughtful, really useful.
Thank you.
you and Kathy, right?
Yeah.
Do we give Kathy Snook anything?
Kathy
Or
Snook.
are you taking it all?
No, Kathy Snook, we divided them, one
I
did
remember
Pratt.
this. This was
Yeah.
really good discussion.
If you just copy and paste it into a Word document, you should be fine.
We have the Word document.
Oh, I just
emailed to you.
Yeah.
So ClearGov, and this I do think should be a short conversation, so I'll preface
Please.
based on your prior comment.
Yeah, I'll make
Push,
sure.
go.
Let's move on to the next.
Maybe not that. I think ClearGov really heard your concerns about the multiple districts and the fees based on per district costs. They got really creative in a pricing arrangement that I think is a little uncharted territory. And because I think they had a couple conversations in Carlisle too, the way he's packaged the pricing right now is a combined enrollment number, which is how they determine cost. So that when he combined Carlisle, Concord, and the joint, the high school, he came up with a mid-sized district for a total cost to all 3 districts, hence the uncharted territory, of $7,500, which is notably better than 5,000 per
Per
district.
district, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so now I
Look
think
at
we're in
news
this
tonight.
discussion of Carlisle would have to want to do this. I've had a little bit of conversation with Jim. I assume you can take some of this back. We were talking, again, this is how the split, we would assume would be a third, a third, a third, but that's up for discussion too, because it's uncharted territory. But I think clearly there's a nice arrangement for all three, a nice benefit for all three districts if we were to go forward with it. So I think that's where we're at, and I think we needed the green light from all of you to engage Carlisle or ask Mary and Christine to do that.
Which I believe you did ask us to do.
And that's all right.
Christine didn't do.
I did.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I did. I think that the price point was too high for Jim,
Yeah.
for what he was gonna get out of it. I don't wanna speak for him, but, you know, I can go back and tell him about this.
Yeah, I did tell him about
Oh, you
this,
did,
so
okay,
he,
so-
and I don't know how
Oh,
you're
the
all
new price tag is too?
approaching it.
No, the original
No, the
price tag
original
was
price
too
tag.
high.
Oh, so,
So this could be a new discussion.
Right, which
yeah,
I
okay,
think,
I'm sorry, okay.
I think Larry's had.
So you're
Because
saying
if Carlisle's not gonna participate, then I think we have to go back to the rep and
Right,
say
get new,
it's
different pricing.
It's a different number.
So how do we find out Carlisle is comfortable? What's that next step?
I'm gonna see Jim tomorrow and something
Okay,
else.
so I looked with him a little bit, and
So
why don't you
he's-
just finish
Does
it?
he have the new numbers?
He should.
So you're just looking for a go or no-go kind of a thing?
Right, because we can't really, our conversation depends on that interest, I
Yeah,
think.
right.
Yep.
Um,
Fair enough.
Because that would be
I love
divided.
the idea of the three districts working together like this. Great.
Would you guess if we did this, we'd be wedded to it forever? Or would you
We'd
say,
have to-
no, you drill down deeply every couple of years with this?
It all depends on how you select to use it. We
Exactly.
are getting asked for feedback on what the public can see in ClearGov right now. We've had 2 or 3 pieces of ClearGov handed to us and asked for some information. I think from our seat right now, if that's going to happen, we need to be able to get to the next layer deep of where the ClearGov numbers are coming from. That's the driving thing for us at the moment. Again, it's all how you use it. So the rest is going to be, if we do go forward, the rest would be on us to make it a valuable tool and something we're productive with and can help with our communication. So.
And to be clear, the price incentive, is it a 1-year incentive or a?
So embedded is that, yeah, embedded in that is the startup fee, and so the annual number would drop to 6, don't hold me to this, but I think it's that 6,000.
So 7,500
For the
for
three
the 3
districts.
and 6,000 ongoing with
Yeah,
some.
we confirm that up with the rep, but that's what my impression was.
Great. Good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And next up is the fiscal 19 budget.
Great. So yeah, in your packets, you saw the last meeting, the Concord version of the variance report. This is the Concord Carlisle variance report as of rolled up by 1,000 function as of 9/18. You'll see that we did have some adjustments that I'm bringing to you, or transfers. They're coming from the 1,000s to the 2,000s, which was, we were budgeting the Director of Teaching and Learning in the Assistant Superintendent function, so we corrected that. Included in that was clerical as well as supplies and materials and
Mike, your mic,
oh,
your mic.
sorry, and 40% of the salary on that. Really close, sorry about that. So, any questions? Sorry. And then behind it, you'll see just the transfers. Again, they are by 1,000 function. You'll see the appropriation, the adjustment amount, and my rationale, transfer in, transfer out.
Really nice.
Great.
The hundreds will be at the next meeting.
That'll have more. for you to look at.
So yes, so
That's
that you will
recorded,
see
right?
all of the transfers that I have done, rolled up by the 100 function. But all of the transfers, other than the ones that you're seeing right now, are within the same function. So the function, the large 1,000 function is not going up. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's all just within that same, this
Yeah.
hasn't changed the overall number.
Correct.
Got it. I like how you do this.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
It seems like you have a dashboard that's better than what you had before.
Yeah. So every transfer that I do, that I have my own notes, so that I could, if you're looking at the, 100 function, in theory, I could answer every question that you have of, where's this movement?
Sorry to run out. I got to hear the details the other day in budget subcommittee.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, any other questions on this? So, action items are next. We basically agreed not to vote on the PEG Studio user agreement. Everyone agree with that? So now we can vote on the 2018-2023 strategic plan. Can I have a motion?
I would move for both districts to approve the 2018 to 2023 strategic plan as presented by Dr. Hunter.
Second?
Second for both.
Further discussion? All those in favor for both and individually?
No.
No, you just do.
All those in
region.
favor for Concord?
Separate?
Yeah, aye.
Aye.
All those for the region?
Aye.
Next is to vote on the CPS, CCRSD, excuse me.
I'll vote to award the contract for the CCHS campus feasibility study to Gale Associates with a base bid price of $49,520.
Second.
All those in favor?
That's all that we're going to need, right?
Yep, that's all you need.
All those in favor for the region?
Aye.
I think it's just
That's
region.
it.
That's just region.
Correct.
Oh, right. This is the one I want to do.
This is yours.
Oh, this is my moment.
Oh.
I would move, can it be, it's the same wording, can I do it for both at once?
Now it's two motions.
It's two
Do you
motions.
see that?
I did, I saw.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, I thought you were, I got it here.
Oh, okay.
So we'll do it separately then. I'll move for the Concord Public School Committee to approve the Maintenance Workers Unit 3, Maintenance Workers Unit 3-year successor agreement for the period of 2018 to 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. And then I would move for the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee to approve the Maintenance Workers Unit 3-year successor agreement for the period of 2018 to 2021.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's your
All right, so I need a motion to accept the donation to support Ripley drinking fountains. My link is not working.
So that's
So-
actually a joint.
Is it?
So
It
moved
is,
for
yes.
both.
Second for both.
All those in favor for Concord?
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor of the region?
Aye.
And our last.
So I'll make a motion to approve the 10 CCHS out-of-state trips for 2018 to 2020 with the condition that we receive a signed district liability insurance waiver from all participants.
Second.
All those in, excuse me,
Discussion?
further discussion?
Just, it seems to me these are all Q5 with the exception of the first one. Is that accurate?
We've essentially moved almost all of the international travel to the end of the school year, so that is accurate. Mike's been kind of like our discussion on the agenda. His goal has been to tidy up these trips so they don't keep trickling into us, and he almost got there. We had one come in that I'm going to have to bring to you in October. He's aiming for 2 to 3 times a year to do them in batches like this.
Oh, I like that he's gone out. So, we,
I have really good news,
Go ahead.
I've been waiting all night for this moment.
Oh,
So-
can I ask a question? Because I think maybe
You probably are gonna, I know somebody's
No,
gonna
I
ask me.
don't know.
No, okay.
This is a lot of money.
You are gonna ask me.
How are all of these, our students going to be able to attend? the
Correct,
course?
so we've been really working, you know we've been having this conversation to try to make these more accessible. Mike pulled a rabbit out of a hat, because that was my question when he sent me these, like, what am I going to say when I get asked again?
You know that we're gonna ask.
He reached out, really creatively reached out to the travel provider, and they have agreed to sponsor scholarships based on the number of kids who participate, and we have tables with the dollar amounts based on the number of kids.
So kind of a
Wow.
buy one, get, buy 10,
It's,
get one free.
there's ratios there to it, but it's giving us some seed money to actually start being able to offer some subsidies, which is what we needed to start with. We think there might be other ways to do it. We couldn't get it off the ground, that was the issue. So thanks to the travel company that we do quite a bit of business with, as you might guess, they've owned that for us and have
Wow.
creatively
That's
helped to
great.
solve it.
That's
And I'm gonna tell you, give your principal
Kudos
full
to
credit, because he
Ryan.
made that phone call.
Wow.
And really helped to take it to another level of partnership. So
Wow,
It appears
that's
to be
great.
sufficient.
it's a starting point. I think
Yeah.
the ongoing challenge we're going to have, who's the in-need child? Some of these are exorbitant enough that an even average family who doesn't come close to qualifying could be considered. So that's our next round of discussion, because now that we've got money, we need to decide what the eligibility will be. So it's a great starting point.
That's great.
And so, we talked about this a little before, so he's moving we're trying to move a lot of this
Mhm.
international travel to Q5.
Right.
So there's a couple of very different Q5, well, I guess every
Yeah.
Q5 experience is unique. So, my concern last year was that it's not the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah, we can share that concern, and
Yeah,
we're
that's-
getting we're making some progress on that. I'm not gonna say we fixed it, because I still think there's discussion to be had, but at least we're getting some opportunity of how we might start to solve it.
I'm curious on the trips that went in Q5 this past
Mhm.
year, what the demand was like. Were there, more kids that wanted to and not everybody could go? Were we trying to fill those
think
trips?
so.
Was it?
I don't think so.
I think there's a little of everything, right? Some
There
of them
really
sell out
is,
quickly.
yeah.
Some of them said, okay, so some of them said, and is it, for Q5 in general, I know kids put in their choices and then they get their list back later.
So the trips don't work
But the
that
trips,
way.
okay, so the
Yeah.
trips don't
No,
work
they have
that
to
way.
commit
Sign
to
up in
these trips
advance.
well
Got
ahead.
it. Okay.
I'm just curious about the calendar. If the first one's June 7th, does that
Mm-hmm.
accommodate snow days? When's the last day of school?
Yeah, this past year, we had a couple trips go out before school was over. And they missed the last couple of days.
Well, that must have been disappointing for
I
the
didn't do
students.
anything. I'm surprised they went.
I'm sure they were heartbroken.
Heartbroken to go out to France.
I have one
John,
question
but-
about the trips. How does it cost $1,000 a head to go to the Tennis Hall of Fame in Newport for a day?
I can't answer that, so I can find out for you.
Yeah, I saw that.
The Royal Box.
It's a little aggressive.
Oh, I thought it was down to,
It's paid by limo.
I thought it had gone down.
Which one?
Yeah,
was that?
Did it go down? It's the Newport Tennis Hall of Fame
I
trip.
was just looking at it.
It's
Oh,
an
yeah,
hour
yeah, yeah.
away.
Oh, you know what? I was thinking that was like the bus and it was
The entire
that was the
cost.
entire trip.
Oh.
The whole thing was $1,000.
That's what I was guessing.
That may be.
Just-
That's
I
probably
feel like I was
right.
wrong.
That's it. Yeah. That must be it.
He's an English teacher. not a-
So this is us trying to get a standard form that Mike's using. I think that's
Yeah.
correct. It's the whole trip.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Sounds like an amazing trip to China. I mean, there's some
know,
trips
it's
here. that-
amazing. It really is.
How do we apply to be one?
I am, I want to chaperone.
All right.
Set a
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I think we've done it.
Do we have
Have
a
a
motion to
motion?
adjourn?
Wow. Wait, can I give you all a quick update first?
Oh,
Yeah,
of course.
because
What's the
let's
number?
this morning, I told you that this morning we were at 800 registrations. You want to go?
862.
You're incredible. 863 right
Really?
now.
What do I win?
You get 3 5K
You get to come volunteer at the Vikings.
Run the concession stand.
That's right.
Yeah, since this morning, 63 more.
So,
Oh my gosh.
10 of those during the time that we've been in our meeting.
Wow.
was there a
900 weather.
All right, was there a motion?
Oh, right.
There was a motion. Was there a
I moved
second?
to adjourn. Oh,
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.